Chapter 638. Even though Duque was a university student who had taken a basic course on the physiological structure of the human body, he had never thought that mages were more like a magical existence that fused 2 and 3 dimensions together. What appeared in his field of vision was the same outer shell of the body, but a completely different internal structure. In the 3-dimensional domain, the brain controlled the functions of his body, directing the operation of every internal organ, making the lungs breathe, the heart pump blood, and the liver detoxify. In the illusory vision of the 2-dimensional world, the mind that extended from the will controlled the magic circuit, and the flow of magic in the mental domain was more like the countless subdivided roots of a large tree, except for the root at the end that was used to absorb the elemental power from the outside world. The rest of the circuit would eventually take the shape of a ring. It was a continuous cycle, and it was constantly building a stronger and more powerful circuit. This was not a complicated process. The entire process could be said to be simple and crude. The light of stars and moon that crashed into Duque's body was simply pressing down on Duque's body with tremendous force. There was nothing in the world that could be achieved in a single leap. To be able to achieve it in one step only meant that one had made thorough preparations. It sounded like reaching the radiant moon level was such a wonderful thing. But in reality, was it really that easy? In order to deal with the third war at the Dark Portal, and even in order to face the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth generation Lich Kings that might appear, Duque had long since built a magic foundation. This was like building a skyscraper that needed to be built with a foundation. If Duque's previous magic circuit was third-rate, it would be like using a matchstick to act as the pier of a bridge across the sea, and it would turn into dregs with one push. The magic circuit model that he used was almost the best model that he could find in this era. With the incomparably thick, arcane throne, as the cornerstone, phoenix flames, and ice crown, flew at the same time. Not only that, with the perfect connection between him and the system elf, the mind control system that Duque built was completely beyond this era. Precisely because he was clear about the development of mages in the original history, as well as the usage and power of new magic, Duque's creation of the magic circuit was expansive. He strived to make sure that the magic flowing in the circuit was pure enough and that a perfect balance between the 3 types of magic could be achieved, which was in line with the magic rules of this world. Duque's eyes were flashing with arcane brilliance as he looked into his body. Although the light of stars and moon was very rough, the magic circuit that was expanding and thickening showed unparalleled flexibility. The inner wall of the aging magic circuit was peeling off rapidly, and the residue that had lost its purpose flowed along with the high-speed impact of the magic power to the smaller, finer end branches of the circuit, and was expelled from the body through the root-like filaments. The walls of the circuits in his body were like a sponge, greedily absorbing the light of the stars and moon that came from outside his body. The new light spread to every circuit in his body along with the flow of magic power. It was a strange beauty of the rising sun, dispelling all the darkness on the earth and replacing everything with light. At this moment, Duque suddenly ran into trouble. When the power of light of the stars and moon broke into the circuits of arcane throne and crown of ice, there was no problem. But phoenix flame didn't seem to match. It wasn't that Malygos had tricked Duque. Light of the stars and moon, as the original magic power of the world of Azeroth, could perfectly match it as long as it was the magic power system of this world. What was wrong was the environment here. This was the Dragon Sleep Temple. It was fine if it was a neutral power, but wasn't advancing the power of the phoenix in the Dragon Sleep Temple, which was the holy land of the dragons. As if provoked, the power of the Dragon Sleep Temple began to invade Duque's body in turn. Its purpose was very clear: to destroy the magic circuit of the phoenix that had provoked the power of the dragons. The dragon power that came from all directions carried a faint draconic might, and it not only continuously impacted the barrier of Duque's consciousness. It also crazily destroyed everything related to the phoenix, the circuit, magic power, and the body cells that were permeated with the power of the phoenix flame. At this moment, Duque was almost against the mysterious power of the entire Dragon Sleep Temple. Ugh! Caught off guard, Duque vomited a large mouthful of blood on the spot. Not good. I miscalculated. Malygos' eyelids twitched. At this moment, he was hesitant. As the king of magic, he certainly understood what had happened to Duque. If he didn't do anything, Duque's circuit would collapse and he would become a useless person in the world of magic. He hesitated for a tenth of a second, but he still stretched out his claws and was ready to help Duque. Whether it was for public or private reasons, he couldn't let Duque die here. However, there was an existence faster than him. As the big sister of the dragon aspects, Alexstrasza ignored his will and forcibly broke through his space. Of course, this had a lot to do with him not objecting. This also reflected the importance of Duque in her eyes. She actually rushed in at the risk of falling out with Malygos? Idiot. Give up your phoenix circuit, I'll give you something better. As she spoke, Alexstrasza pressed a powerful palm on Duque's back. This time, Duque truly saw how terrifying the strength of the top existences in this world was. He believed that the mental barrier that he and the system elf had figured out together was very complete. This was already layered, and just looking at it made his scalp tingle. According to military theory, this not only had crossfire cover, but it also took into account the characteristics of flexibility and sturdiness. Duque thought that this was the Maginot line of defense in the world of magic. However, under the attack of the Red Dragon Queen, such an incomparably complex mental defense collapsed like melting snow. She didn't have that kind of patience. Her method was simpler and more violent. In the first contact, she found the attribute of the mental power in the mental barrier and directly dissolved it with the corresponding attribute. You are the 5 elements. She is the reverse 5 elements. She directly erased the mental attribute on your mental barrier and decomposed the willpower into the most primitive divine thoughts. If she had the intention to harm Duque, Duque would be an idiot by now. Obviously, she wasn't. The flames were clearly violent and wanton. After Alexstrasza took over part of Duque's mental control, she decisively blew up the phoenix circuit in Duque's body and expelled it all out. Duque spat out another mouthful of blood. What was even more strange was that as soon as this mouthful of blood left his lips, it turned into a turbid flame and disappeared. Duque could see that, starting from his heart, there were hundreds of thousands of golden threads spreading out from his heart like tree roots. After reaching various parts of the body like blood vessels, they formed interlocking rings like veins that could recycle waste and return to the heart. Chapter 639. These were networks of various sizes. These were the newly born magic circuits. Magic power that was many times stronger than a morning star began to circulate inside. It flowed endlessly, surged, and never stopped. Even if Duque's life stopped, as long as there was still a will controlling it, the magic circuits could still operate endlessly and eternally. Perhaps the undead in the future did not need to be disturbed by the characteristics of a physical body and could focus on the magic circuits. That was why there were so many liches and great wizards. If Duque was really a cultivation maniac who pursued mysterious power, he would not be able to achieve eternal life. Perhaps he would also walk the evil path that many wizards had taken in history. Let's get back to the present. After Alexstrasza destroyed his Phoenix Flames magic circuit, Duque's situation did not completely improve. Instead, it showed signs of worsening. It was not that the Flames circuit that the Red Dragon Queen had created for Duque was not good, but it was similar to the problems that Duque had encountered in the past. It was because it was too good that it began to overbearingly occupy the share of all the magic circuits in Duque's body. Alexstrasza frowned. She had also discovered the problem. She could build all of Duque's magic circuits according to the template she could make, but this would cause Duque's attributes to go from a perfect balance of multiple attributes to a single fire attribute. In the future, Duque could only mix fire. At some point, Malygos came before the human and dragon. Alexstrasza. Is this human very important to you? The queen gritted her teeth and nodded. Recalling the bits and pieces of Duque, Malygos rarely changed his view of humans. Perhaps I really underestimated the usefulness of this human? Perhaps you owe me a favor. With that, the humanoid Malygos extended his hand to Duque. His hand met Alexstrasza's and pressed on Duque's chest. It was also a magical concept invasion, but the circuit that was replaced this time was different. Antonida's Crown of Ice was destroyed and replaced with Maligo's unknown ice circuit. No, it wasn't just the ice element. Even Duque's arcane throne was being modified. It continued to expand and expand. It was a terrible feeling. Duque opened his mouth wide, and his jaw was so wide that his throat could be seen. He wanted to shout, he wanted to roar, but he couldn't utter a single word. Behind was fire, and in front was ice. This was the true meaning of ice and fire. However, in order to endure the two heavens of ice and fire, one's body had to be strong enough. The system notification rang out non-stop. Warning. Warning. Extremely powerful fire and ice magic circuit patterns discovered. The two magic circuit models demanded a high amount of magic power from the Olympian mathematical circuit. Correspondingly, the power will also increase correspondingly. Duque clenched his teeth and roared in the spiritual world, "Damn you! I'm not afraid of you." System Elf, reverse calculate the arcane circuit model that satisfies both magic circuits at the same time. The system calculated at super high speed. In less than 20 milliseconds, the calculation results came out. The calculation results are here, but it is seriously not recommended for the host to try based on this, because according to the calculations, the magic power gap is as high as 369%. Do it. Host, I seriously don't recommend, do it. My magic power is not enough, but it doesn't mean that the two big bosses don't have enough magic power. If it were anyone else, or if it were in the past, Duque would be courting death by doing this, and it would be the kind of courting death that he brought upon himself. But it was different now. In a sense, this was more like an unkind way of demanding repayment for kindness. Human relationships were very mysterious. Blindly giving without asking for anything in return might make the other party very grateful at first, but after a long time, it would make the other party feel an unequal sense of loss. Just like Alexstrasza, she was the noble dragon queen, controlled supreme power, and had thousands of red dragons and dragonoid warriors under her command. During this period of time, it always gave her a sense of frustration that she couldn't help because of the restrictions of the rules or for other reasons. Help me. Strictly speaking, Duque didn't say these two words. Don't forget who were in front of and behind him. The two dragon kings. At such a close distance, any small movement of Duque, or even the unnatural vibration in the air, would be sensed by them. In fact, if Duque didn't choose to construct the arcane circuit as the foundation, Maligos almost wanted to force the magic circuit that he thought was suitable to Duque. Although the circuit that he forced into the past was definitely not as good as the one that Duque created according to the situation, it would at least match the magic circuit that he and Alexstrasza sent out. Now, under such circumstances, Duque actually told them the arcane circuit model to be strengthened through the spiritual connection. Maligos couldn't help but look at Duque in a higher light. It was the same for the king of magic, and it was the same for the life giver. The two dragon kings' faces were filled with undisguised shock. They were absolutely sure that before this, Duque had never come into contact with such a top-notch magic circuit model. It wasn't about secrecy. The outstanding physical talent of the dragon race allowed them to carry more and stronger magic circuits. In a sense, the magic circuit models that humans and elves came into contact with were emasculated versions that had been repeatedly weakened so that humans and elves could afford them. Secondly, to create such a powerful magic circuit, it also required an astronomical amount of magic power for humans. Most mortals wouldn't even consider this direction. For example, Sun King Anastrian used the power of the sun well to charge up. Without deducing how to use this power, how could he create the corresponding magic circuit model? In such a short time, not only did Duque deduce it, but in the eyes of the two dragon kings, this model was even more perfect than the models they could imagine and more suitable for Duque's body. They sucked in a breath of cold air. So there are real geniuses among humans. The two dragon kings thought at the same time. They looked at each other and immediately injected magic power without hesitation. This was the invasion of magic power, and it was almost a reverse of primary and secondary cooperation. The golden flame magic power and the pure white frost magic power each drew a circle in Duque's body. On the other side, there was an additional pure arcane power that passed through Duque's body and was mobilized to the place that Duque wanted. As the foundation of the two major magic circuits, the arcane circuit that Duque used as the foundation was also continuously thickening, deepening, and consolidating. Its construction speed even surpassed the sum of the two Dragon Kings. 3 huge compound circuits gradually took shape in Duque's body. Chapter 640. Closer. Even closer. So close that they almost overlapped. When the ice and fire circuits came into contact with the arcane circuits, there was no impact like when Mars collided with Earth. Instead, there was a strange harmony. As if they had gone through thousands of calculations, the 3 circuits matched so perfectly that even Malygos, the king of magic, was surprised. It was not like the harmony of singing and the basic matching of the key could be deceived under the cover of the music. This was a true match that involved thousands of connection points of various sizes. This kind of coordination was completely beyond the scope of detection and correction by the human brain, or even the dragon brain. Even for a magic-type dragon aspect like Malygos, such a minor problem was not something he needed to consider. For him, the human body was too small as a vessel for magic. It would be a success if there was no leakage of magic that affected the body's functions on a large scale. However, there was no huge impact this time, nor was there any stiff feeling of mana splattering due to the mismatch. It was a complete fusion of water and milk. From the connection of the main circuit to the fusion of the branch circuits, there were more than thousands of collisions in this moment of contact. At this point in the construction of the magic circuit, the most dangerous moment had passed. What was left was the refinement gained from countless experiments, the understanding of the upper and lower limits of magic output, and the understanding of the amount of magic produced in the body. Of course, in the eyes of the two Dragon Kings, this was all that the light of the stars and moon could do. They did not expect that Duque did not stop there. Malygos was the first to discover the problem. Duque's magic circuit was too large even for a radiant moon wizard. Magic circuits were not static things. Wizards would further expand the circuit according to their casting needs. In other words, some branches that would affect the stability of the main circuit would be cut off. This kid, Duque, was obviously building his magic circuit with a Breaking Dawn wizard as the standard. He's really ambitious. Malygos could not help but laugh. Isn't that so? Without enough ambition, who would think of plotting against Nesario with the level of a Morningstar wizard? Alexstrasza smiled like a flower. You still want me to help him further? Malygos was a little displeased. Favors could not be owed endlessly. It was like a person who borrowed 1,000,000 yuan from the bank, and then immediately borrowed another 100,000,000 yuan. Insatiable greed would be hated. At that moment, Duque, whose body was starting to stabilize, revealed what he had been plotting for a long time. I have news that a demon specializing in necromancy has his eyes on Sindagosa's remains. He probably wants to use dark magic to make Sindagosa into a bone dragon. Who dares? Like a dog whose tail had been stepped on, Malygos immediately blew his beard and glared. The commander of the Burning Legion, the deceiver Kill, Jaden. Duque slowly slandered Chairman Dan. I'm not lying. In the future, when the Lich King resurrects Sindagosa and builds the Scourge army, wouldn't it be Kill, Jaden's idea? At this time, it was of utmost importance to have someone to speak up for him. Alexstrasza said, it's been 10,000 years. In the past, you didn't let Sindagosa return to the Dragonbone Waste because of Neltharion's hatred. Now that everything is over, it's only right to bring her and the remains of the other blue dragons back. The Dragonbone Waste was equivalent to the ancestral graves of the dragons. The ancestral graves were guarded by guardians. Malygos glanced at Duque. All right, you're right. Now, you and I are even. With that, Malygos casually threw a spot of light into Duque's arms. He saw the system prompt. Congratulations, host. You have obtained the Fire of Breaking Dawn, temporarily sealed, will be unsealed when your strength is sufficient. This is an extremely rare treasure in the world. With it, you will no longer have any obstacles in stepping into the Breaking Dawn realm. Duke was smashed by this sudden huge meat pie. He was in a state of blissful stupor and felt dizzy. Whether it was the possible Draenor expedition or the destined Third War of the Dark Portal, the power of mortals was no longer reliable. War was no longer something that could be settled by piling up the power of mortals. Only extraordinary power was the most reliable. Now it was like a pillow when he was sleepy. Duke didn't have a good impression of Malygos at first. Now, even if this old blue dragon was a male, Duke had the urge to kiss him a few times. Suddenly, Duke's entire body was turned around. The first thing that came into view was that beautiful face with a hint of slyness. Yo! No need to thank him. Just thank me. The Red Dragon Queen puffed out the pair of giant cats in front of her chest and then made a proud expression. Damn, I was quite touched just now. Now I don't feel anything. Duke was also speechless towards this ancient female dragon who made him feel angry and funny at the same time. She also didn't seem to understand the ways of the world. Are you trying to say that the debt between us is also settled? Duke touched his nose. Alexstrasza displayed her proud queen's demeanor. She elegantly pressed her right hand on her sexy collarbone and raised her chin slightly. Her golden vertical pupils flashed with pride. How is that possible? Saving my dragon egg, freeing me from my painful captivity. How can the insignificant light of stars and moon, and breaking dawn fire, compare? Don't tell me that someone as powerful as me is worth the same as a mere human breaking dawn wizard? Alright, what you said makes sense. I don't mind if you continue to owe me a favor. Duke rolled his eyes and shrugged. After nagging the queen for a while, Duke began to calm down and carefully feel the surging mana that had risen to the next level. A day later, a piece of news shocked the entire Lordaeron. The 17-year-old Duke Marcus had suddenly become a radiant moon wizard. The moment Duque stepped out of the portal, all the high-ranked wizards in Lordaeron sensed it. Morning stars, as the name suggested, were the radiance of their power. In the eyes of others, they were just the light of the stars. Even though they had the ability to generate mana, it was extremely limited. Radiant moon was a completely different concept. Not to mention the quality, just the quantity alone was more than 100 levels higher than a morning star. On a cloudless night, one could ignore the stars in the sky, but definitely not the moon that hung high in the sky. This was especially so when the Radiant Moon Great Wizard who was protecting Tyreenas told him about Duque's advancement. He was stunned for a long time. Because, be it humans, dwarves, or high elves, any Radiant Moon Wizard would be respectfully addressed as Great Wizard. Chapter 641. A 17-year-old Archmage? Any mage who reached the Archmage level would definitely become an honored guest of any kingdom. He became a great wizard at the age of 17, and he was the only one in the past 1,000 years apart from Medivh. Countless people were so shocked that they lost their ability to speak. Isn't this too ridiculous? King Salas Trollbane was silent for a long time. Haha. If Duque is willing to admit that he's a dwarf, I'll definitely give him an honorary warrior medal from Iron Furnace Castle. Magni Bronzebeard laughed loudly. We dwarves don't have mages, and Duque isn't a warrior, Muradin Bronzebeard mocked his elder brother. Why isn't he a dwarf? Jerbin said regretfully. Of course, the happiest was still Stormwind. Lang received the news. He knew very well that Stormwind was in the process of restoring its kingdom. The ministers of internal affairs obviously wanted to break a copper coin in half, but they still announced on the spot that Stormwind would hold a large banquet to celebrate Duque's promotion. Lang and Daylin had been discussing bilateral trade, but the two kings couldn't wait for Duque to return from the teleportation array and came together to welcome Duque. Halfway between the venue and the teleportation array, they met Duque, who was already surrounded by the Windrunner sisters. Duque. Lang was overjoyed. Weren't you going to the Dragon Slumber Temple ceremony? Why did you suddenly promote? I'm curious too, Daylin said. Duque sighed. Sigh, the Blue Dragon King Malygos is very grateful that I helped him avenge his wife's death. He dragged me along and insisted on teaching me some magic experience. Since the King of Magic is so kind, I can't refuse. I accidentally leveled up. On Duque's right, Aurelia had a hard time holding it in, but she was a sensible woman and barely held back her laughter. On the left, Sasha couldn't hold it in. She covered her mouth secretly because she was afraid that she would accidentally laugh and cause internal injuries. 2 minutes ago, Duque had just told them that he had shamelessly asked Maligos to return the favor, and then something had happened. Alexstrasza had protected him with her life, which was why he had been promoted with the help of the 2 dragon kings. Now that he was in front of the 2 kings, how did it become the proud blue dragon king who was kneeling down and licking his boots to promote him? Sasha was not someone who was good at hiding her emotions. Aurelia also had her flaws, but King Dahlin did not care. What Dai Lin cared about was the fact that Duque had advanced. Duke Marcus's rise to power was legendary in the entire alliance and even the entire human world. In this legend, the only fly in the ointment was Duque's personal strength. Although Duque also had the battle record of killing a sword sage, his combat power was obviously lower than that of Uther, Andoin, and Antonidas. Now, Duque's last shortcoming was made up for. What was presented in front of Dai Lin was the perfect Duque. Dai Lin was complimenting him, but no one knew what he was thinking. On the other side, Andoin had also rushed over. He had been attending another meeting, and had galloped here with Mograine. Without saying anything, he went up and gave Lin Li a bear hug. Ahem. I'm going to die. Let go. You orc in human skin, Duque cursed. Ha 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 ha. Laughter was heard everywhere. It was a joy to be able to bully a newly advanced archmage. Lang was gratified. Duque's timely promotion had given him hope of reviving the Storm Royal mages. Many of the mages that Duque had won over with the Karazhan library had secretly complained that Duque did not have enough time to guide them. There were also some who saw that Duque's level was not high, and had other thoughts. All of this was solved with Duque's promotion. Not every mage apprentice or low-level mage could receive guidance from Antonidas, let alone the Sun King Anastrian, who would not teach outsiders. Being able to receive guidance from a Radiant Moon Archmage was the ultimate goal of most mage apprentices with potential. He had thought that Stormwind would not be able to recover in the field of mystery after losing Medivh, but now it seemed that was not the case. As long as Duque could become a Breaking Dawn mage before the age of 30, no, 50, then Stormwind's position in the field of mystery would be as solid as a rock. Unfortunately, Duque had told Lang that Karazhan was a little unstable. Otherwise, Lang would be willing to celebrate for 3 to 5 days. However, this did not affect the banquet tonight. The second day of the 3rd year of the Dark Portal. The New Year's banquet had just been held last night. Most of the nobles did not expect that there would be another grand banquet soon. A grand banquet usually required a lot of preparation, but since the 25th of December, there would be banquets almost every day. As long as one could afford it, it was as luxurious as one could ask for. Standing at the entrance of the banquet hall of the Stormwind State Guesthouse, King Lang, Andoin, and the protagonist of the night, Duque, received the blessings of every guest. Congratulations, Your Excellency Marcus. No one expected Prince Arthas to come from Rotterdam. Today, Arthas was dressed splendidly. The black evening gown custom-made by the royal tailor was perfect for him. Although Arthas was only 13 years old, his outstanding genes made him not only tall, but also had the potential to be a handsome guy. Thank you, Your Highness, Duque replied respectfully. Actually, I am not much younger than Your Excellency. If possible, I would still like to call you Brother Duque. You can call me by my name as well. Arthas's face was as handsome as a spring breeze, and it was difficult for anyone to resist her enthusiasm. All right then. Welcome, Arthas. The King Duque secretly channeled mana into his arms. At this moment, Duque was like an ogre. He gave Arthas a bear hug and made it hard for him to breathe. The 13-year-old had not developed well yet, and Arthas was defeated immediately. Everyone said that Duque was weak, but it did not seem like it. Arthas, who had been crushed by Duque's strength, finally managed to catch his breath. His face was red. Sorry, my father is not feeling well today. He asked me to come and congratulate you on his behalf, Duque. Not feeling well? Was Tarina's feeling stifled? The leaders of the various kingdoms who heard this snickered. One by one, the nobles came to congratulate Duque. Other than Kuel, Salis and Gilnas who had left the alliance, all the leaders of the kingdoms came. The only unexpected guest was Crassus, who came with Ronan. After some small talk, Crassus said, Duque, why don't you come and be Ronan's teacher? Huh? Chapter 642. Duque was shocked. To be Ronan's teacher? That didn't seem right. Although there was no seniority in learning, as long as you were of a lower level than the other party, regardless of whether you were 80 years old or 100 years old, you had to call someone senior, but a 17-year-old young man with a 20-year-old disciple, that scene, not to mention that was Ronan. The famous example of a loser's counterattack in history, Ronan, who had no background but was almost at the level of a mage. If he took Ronan as his disciple, he felt that his moral integrity would be greatly reduced. Well, even Duque himself did not believe that he was a person of moral integrity for a long time. Duque told himself in his heart, I even saved Lothar, what difference does it make if I take Ronan as my disciple? However, he still had to put on an act. Duque said sincerely, Ronan, after all, I have gone through life and death with you. Personally, I quite admire you. Perhaps I have enough achievements to boast to anyone, but my age is right there, and I may not be more knowledgeable than you. Do you really want to be my disciple? Ronan looked a little embarrassed. Duque was right, but so what? Duque's resume blinded all the mages. A 17-year-old radiant moon mage. Killed the Burning Legion's boss, Sargeras. Saved hundreds of thousands of Stormwind citizens. Transported 50,000 elite soldiers on an ice ship in one night. Became the Alliance's deputy commander at the age of 16, led the army to conquer the entire Lordaeron continent, and killed millions of orcs. Killed the Sacred Swordsman chief, destroyed a warlock. Saved the Red Dragon Queen, killed Nethario. Even though he had gone on adventures with Duque, Ronan knew very well that the one standing in front of him was a living legend of the Alliance. He put one hand on his chest and bowed. No, Lord Marcus is too humble. Your courage is no less than Wuther the Lightbringer who charged against 200,000 orcs with 12 riders. Your wisdom is enough to light up the entire Azeroth starry sky. I, Ronan, sincerely hope to worship Lord Marcus as my master, to learn how to be a person, to learn wisdom, and to learn the mysteries of magic. These words were definitely not thought up by Ronan himself. If Luo Ning was this good with words, he wouldn't have offended so many people in the first place. Duque shifted his gaze to Crassus's face. The human-shaped red dragon couldn't help but blush. Damn you. He was just short of whistling and pretending to be innocent. Luo Ning panicked and tried to explain, no. Lord Marcus, don't blame Lord Crassus. I was afraid that I would say something wrong, so I asked him for advice. This time, it was Crassus' turn to laugh. Don't underestimate our great hero, Duque. If he was such a petty person, no matter how great his achievements were, he wouldn't have been recognized by so many kings. In the direction Crassus was pointing. Sure enough, Luo Ning saw the officials of the 9 great kingdoms chatting merrily and wittily. This was a private banquet, but the dignitaries of various countries had come. What was their purpose? This had long since surpassed simple benefits, it was more of a recognition of Duke Marcus. At this moment, Luo Ning's eyes were filled with indescribable envy. This expression lasted for 2 seconds, and then he turned around and bowed deeply towards Duque. I ask Lord Marcus to accept me as a disciple. I might not be able to become a great hero like you, but I still hope that one day, I can become a great arcana master on par with Lord Marcus. Good. I agree. However, calling him Lord Marcus was too distant. You can call me Teacher Duque in the future. Understood, Teacher Duque. Seeing the super awesome person whose name would go down in history actually take him as his master, Duque felt his bones go numb, even his footsteps were a bit light. After Luo Ning left, Aurelia, dressed in evening clothes, couldn't help but ridicule Duque. Hey! Duque, is taking Luo Ning as a disciple really something to be happy about? Wintessa also came over. Yes. I feel that he's a bit special in arcane magic, but not necessarily outstanding. Don't true geniuses have already shown their talents long ago? No. Duque pretended to shake the index finger of his right hand mysteriously. Rather than doubt, you should believe in my foresight. Speaking of foresight, the Windrunner sisters put their hands on their hips. On this point, they really had to admire Duque. He really made a mistake when using people. Even bringing Marion when saving the Red Dragon Queen could not be said to be a mistake, because judging from how Duque had backfired on Nesario, perhaps Duque had predicted this from the beginning. Duque did not know if he could train Luo Ning well. After all, in the original history, there were 3 great pharaoh of the younger generation, Khadgar, Luo Ning, and Jaina. One became a ghost, one seemed to have been robbed of his role by someone and became a bit unknown, and the last one was still a lowly who had not yet expired. Duque silently muttered in his heart, this is the world's fault. After the Second World War at the Dark Portal, Duque still felt that the world did not seem to have changed as much as he had imagined. However, with this abominable transmigrator stirring up trouble, things seemed to be developing in a strange direction. On the other side, Dai Lin and Lang seemed to be talking about something, and then Andoin also went over to join in. Looking at the 3 guys who were beaming with joy, Duque suddenly had a feeling that these 3 guys were going to cause trouble. Suddenly shivering, Duque had an ominous premonition in his heart. Sure enough, in the next second, 3 burly animals came together. Duque pulled Luo Ning over as a shield. Yo, why are the 3 of you here together? Just in time, let me introduce you, this is my new disciple, Luo Ning. He is extremely talented in arcane magic. Seeing the 3 nobles at the same time, Luo Ning was a little confused. Only when Duque secretly kicked him did Luo Ning come to his senses. Your Majesty Proudmoore, Your Majesty Rin, Commander Lothar, greetings. Haha. Disciple. It's okay, I believe in your judgment. Lothar's loud voice was the first to congratulate him. But Lang. For some reason, Duque always felt that Lang's gaze seemed to be telling him, Duque, you brought this upon yourself? Did I do something wrong? Duque, you've started to accept disciples? Dailin's eyes were playful. Can't I? At least I can be respectfully addressed as the Great Mage, Duque replied with his hands on his waist. No, I very much recognize your strength. Since you've already accepted a disciple, why don't you also accept a genius in frost magic? Who? As soon as he asked, Duque felt a little regretful. He already knew the answer. Yo, Jaina, come here for a while. Dai Lin called out to his daughter. Duque clenched his teeth, looking as if he had a toothache. The next moment, Duque saw a golden-haired lowly in a blue dress with white edges walking over quickly. Chapter 643. Jaina Proudmoore. She was the famous girl who sold her father. Now, she was still a lowly who had not yet expired. When Duque saw Jaina again, he was shocked. The 13-year-old Jaina was already beautiful beyond the mortal world. After not seeing her for more than a year, the girl's puberty was obvious. She had inherited her mother's beauty. The influence of puberty had affected her, and the curve of her but had become beautiful. Her chest, which used to be exquisite, had now become seductive. Ah! The unripe fruit had also begun to grow into a ripe peach. Congratulations, Master Duque. Seeing Jaina give him a well-behaved lady's bow, Duke's mind was in a trance. His eyes were seeing things, and his ears were hearing things. Jaina tilted her head and said to Duque, Brother, although I don't mind, according to the law, if you push me down, you will be sentenced to at least 3 years in prison, and the highest is life. In the spiritual world, Duque's nose started to bleed, and he replied in a domineering manner, 3 years of hard work. Life is not a loss. The little lowly Jaina's face suddenly turned pale. All right. The scene returned to reality. Duke looked at Jaina with a dignified and calm gaze. She did not have many complicated thoughts, and she had the purity of Princess Kalia, as well as a pair of eyes that Kalia did not have. Yes. The biggest difference was in those sapphire eyes. If Kalia was a canary in a cage that King Tarinas had carefully nurtured, she would not be able to escape. In that case, Jaina was a polar ice phoenix who was ready to set her dreams free at any time. Noble, beautiful, but with a faint sense of danger. A very magical sense of excitement was stimulating Duque's senses. And Dellen's next words made Duque feel a strange excitement in his heart reach its peak. Duque. There is a big gap between our ages, and after going through life and death together, I have long regarded you as my little brother. My daughter is not like me, she cannot be the daughter of the sea. But I don't want to waste her unparalleled magic talent, so I want to entrust her to you. Duque tried to suppress the strange feeling in his heart. I remember that Her Highness Jaina worships His Excellency the most. But Lord Antonidas is busy. I've asked him a few times, but he always brushed me off. Daylin shrugged. I'm busy too. Karazhan will be attacked by demons soon. Even if I do, I still have to rebuild Stormwind, Duque said shamelessly. Suddenly, Antonidas came over. Are you trying to say that you have less energy than an old man like me? You bastard, did you guys discuss this beforehand? Duque seemed to want to refuse. I'm sorry. Daylin, Gianna is too beautiful. What if I can't control myself? Before Duque could finish, Daylin had already put his arm around Duque's shoulder. It's all right. Just remember to pay for your ticket after boarding the ship. I'm not picky when it comes to betrothal gifts. Just give me a deep water port as a betrothal gift. Father, Jaina was so embarrassed that she stomped her feet anxiously. Although she'd heard that her father wanted to betroth her to Duque, it was still embarrassing for a noble princess to say it in public. Dear, I'm just saying. Daylin comforted his daughter casually. Duque couldn't stay calm anymore. Damn you. Are you trying to test my moral integrity? Aren't you afraid that I won't pay for my ticket after boarding the ship? No. First, I believe that you're not that kind of person. Second, if you are, I'll declare war on Stormwind. Even if all the men in the country die, I'll kill you. When Daylin said this, Duque's face turned green. Bullsh *T. He might even become the son-in-law of the Proudmoore family. If he taught her well, there would be no benefit at all. Only a ghost would do that. Please forgive me for firmly rejecting you, Duque said firmly. Don't be in such a hurry to reject me. At this time, Lang and Andoin came up. Andoin put his hand on Duque's shoulder and showed him a contract made of craft paper. It was a 10-year economic and trade contract between Stormwind and the Kingdom of Kurtiras. From trade to supplies, to arms supply, to maritime cooperation. It was almost a comprehensive cooperation between the two countries. Duque roughly looked at it. Stormwind could earn at least 2 million gold coins every year, and that was only for the first year. In other words, the contract was estimated to be worth more than 20 million gold coins. Obviously, this was a cooperation that Stormwind couldn't refuse. Lang, you're selling me off for a mere 20 million? Duque was devastated. You can't put it that way. Princess Jaina will return to Kurtiras after studying under you until she's 20, or if she reaches the Radiant Moon rank early, or if you marry another noble, Leon said, a little embarrassed. Duque vomited 3 liters of blood. The other party wasn't trying to force it onto them unreasonably. Teaching someone's daughter would earn him 20 million gold coins in net profit. Although it would be split for 10 years, Duque knew very well that the southern continent's Iron Furnace Fort and Stormwind City would have nothing to do with the third battle of the Dark Portal. As long as they survived the wave of Zul, Stormwind would welcome a 10-year development period. Moreover, becoming enemies with Kurtiras would not benefit Stormwind at all. Before the underground train tunnel was opened to the Iron Furnace Fort, Stormwind's only way to communicate with the outside world was through the sea. There was no need to go north through the burning steppes. The black iron dwarves who opposed the bronze-beard dwarves were at the bottom of the Black Rock Mountain. Going there for trade would be suicide. Duque looked at Lang and Andoin, then at Dahlin and Antonides. These old foxes all had an invisible devil's tail on their buttocks, wagging it as they snickered. Lang, Andoin, is there really no room for discussion? Duque asked. The two bastards shook their heads like a rattle drum. Duque's bird of despair. Father, didn't we agree that it's only an apprenticeship? Jaina asked. It's an apprenticeship. Dahlin replied. It's just a precaution, so I said it first. Jaina was also a bird of despair. Just like that, the bitter Jaina walked in front of Duque. Jaina Proudmoore requests Master Duke Marcus to accept me as a disciple and guide me on the path of arcane magic. All right. Duque said helplessly. From today onwards, you are my disciple, Duque. Come, greet Luo Ning. He entered the sect earlier than you, so he's your big brother. Greetings, senior brother Ronan. Greetings, junior sister Jaina. Ronan was older, so Jaina's greeting was not out of place. At this time, Dahlin suddenly said, Duque, I know my daughter is a little smart and has all kinds of ideas. I'm afraid you won't be able to control her. How about this, I'll give you my sword. I, Dahlin, hereby swear in the name of Proudmoore that I will give Duke Marcus the right to discipline my daughter Jaina. If Jaina does anything that goes against the rules of humanity, Master Duque can use this sword to punish Jaina. I, Dahlin, will not object. Chapter 644. Duque was dumbfounded. The leaders of the alliance were dumbfounded. This was an era where nobles controlled society. It was also an era where the spirit of chivalry was important. If a knight felt that his apprentice had violated the spirit of chivalry, he could speak up and kill the apprentice without taking any responsibility. The people around would instead praise the knight for putting his own family before justice. However, this rarely happened among nobles, let alone among the royal family. The kings present were all smart people. They quickly understood why Dahlin did this. After all, Dahlin had put in a lot of effort. Originally, the most ideal successor of Kultiras was the eldest prince, Drake. Drake was an excellent successor who had received Dahlin's teachings. Be it in martial arts, style, or courage, he was a model among the princes. Drake, who had been independent since a long time ago, was comparable to his father in terms of leadership. However, Drake had died under the dragon breath of the ancient red dragon, Tyrannistas. That was why Dahlin had gone on a rampage. Duque had asked for justice for him. Dahlin was extremely grateful to Duque. After the grief, Dahlin had to face reality. He had to choose a new successor. He only had 2 legitimate children, his second son, Tandrid, and his daughter, Jaina. No one would care if a noble had 10,000 illegitimate children, but the only legitimate successor recognized by other nobles was the child of a noble lady of the same bloodline. Unless these 2 children also died, it would not be his illegitimate daughter's turn to stand up for him. Since Thoradin the Great, there had never been a female queen in the human kingdom. Dahlin knew that his second son, Tandrid, was only a mediocre person, while Jaina was extremely talented, both in terms of magic and intelligence. Jaina was still relatively naive now. He was afraid that there would be opponents in the future. If he left Jaina in the country, Tandrid would definitely not be Jaina's match if someone ignited Jaina's ambition. Since Thoradin the Great's era, the princesses of the Eastern Kingdom were notoriously hard to find a husband. If they wanted to marry, they had to at least have a noble status. They were either princes or at least dukes. This also depended on whether it could bring enough benefits to the country and whether the other country's king would agree. Just like Princess Kalia of Rotterdam, Tyrannis had his eyes on Duque at first, but unfortunately, he met Lord Presto, who was disguised as Deathwing. If Kalia had not faked her death, according to Tyrannis's personality, it would not be surprising if Kalia was left alone in the palace for the rest of her life. It wasn't something that could be done casually, It wouldn't do if the nobles were too low in status, but if the nobles were too high in status, they would be afraid that the nobles would use their power to bully them. Any duke who marries a princess becomes a prince in the truest sense of the word. If something were to happen to the official heir, it would be a loss of royal authority. This kind of thing happened too many times since ancient times. Before the war, Daylin didn't really mind Jaina and Prince Arthas of Lordaeron getting closer. Being the Queen of Lordaeron didn't seem to be a bad thing. The battle at the Dark Portal changed everything. Lordaeron's reputation was tarnished. Tarina's putting Nesario in an important position could still be justified, but Tarina's and the entire upper class of Lordaeron's attempt to annex Alterac was real. Without this, there would be no such thing as making Presto the king. Tarina's was willing to use Neltharion. Who knew if he would kill Van Reed after Arthas married Jaina? If that was the case, Lordaeron could legitimately annex Kul Tiras. So Daylin completely changed his mind. He didn't even want to put Jaina in the Dalajan, which was so close to Lordaeron. If Arthas really wanted to see Jaina, he could just take a boat across Lordaeron Mill Lake. But if he put Jaina in Karazhan, which was in the hinterland of Stormwind, that would be a different story. Daylin didn't believe that Tarina's would let Arthas cross more than 2,000 kilometers, or use something as dangerous as a portal to meet Jaina. If he really did come, wouldn't there be Duque to block the way? Now that Duque had accepted Jaina as his disciple, it was like the fish had taken the bait. Daylin knew his daughter's charm very well. She was only 12 years old, but she had already charmed all the male Dalajan mages. Now, she was even more beautiful. From today onwards, she was going to live under the same roof as Duque for 7 years. Daylin didn't believe that nothing would happen. Daylin was also an experienced playboy when he was young. He could tell at a glance that Aurelia and Sasha, who were always by Duque's side, had already fallen for him. It wasn't just the Windrunner sisters. The little girl from the Barav family was also deeply in love even though she was still a virgin. Daylin was very smart, but he would never know that Duque was a transmigrator. He was extremely wary of his precious daughter. Fire, theft, and betrayal. Duque was really afraid. He was afraid that he would be cursed to death if he wasn't careful. Daylin had his own wishful thinking. Duque also had his own black-bellied plan. In just 2 minutes, a set of, the real black-bellied lowly training plan, had been born in Duque's mind. However, Duque, who was possessed by the best actor, didn't let anyone notice anything amiss. Everyone. While we're celebrating Duque's promotion to a Radiant Moon Archmage, I'd like to announce a piece of good news. My daughter, Jaina, is going to be Duque's disciple. She's going to learn the secrets of magic from Duque. Daylin struck while the iron was hot and announced it publicly. This instantly ignited the enthusiasm of the big shots in the alliance. Congratulations. This was the blessing of the neutral King Salas. Wow. Are you sure it's her teacher and not her husband? This was the ridicule of the dwarf King Magni. That's right, that's right. This was the cheering of the crowd, Kidron. Yo. Duque, don't misguide the magic genius Jaina. In my opinion, Jaina's talent is astonishing. She'll at least become a Radiant Moon Archmage in the future. The old fool Antonidas teased. Then. Duque, as a teacher, shouldn't you give your disciple a presentable gift? Jurban, you damned shortest of them all. I'll remember you. With so many kings jeering and nobles watching, if Duque didn't take out something good, how would he be able to mingle in the alliance's upper echelons? Duque didn't hesitate either. Greetings, Teacher Marcus. When Ronan knelt on one knee and Jaina kowtowed, Duque took out 2 pieces of magic equipment. Ronan was an accessory, while Jaina was a pair of gloves. Daylin elbowed Antonidas. How about it? Does Duque mistreat my daughter? Antonidas' eyes bulged, and after a long time, he said, Duque, let's make a deal. Can you exchange these 2 items for me? Chapter 645. Wow, under the cheers of the 3 dwarf kings, the leaders of the alliance and even the surrounding nobles let out a second wave of exclamations. Who was Antonidas? He was one of the two Breaking Dawn great wizards in the current known kingdom. After Kuel Salus left the alliance, he became the leader of the alliance's occult domain. The things that Duque had given to his two disciples actually made even Antonidas jealous. How precious were they? After hearing Antonidas's evaluation, even Jaina, who was used to seeing big things, was so shocked that her mouth opened in an O shape. She almost spat out her tongue. She was a country bumpkin who had never seen an exquisite equipment before. At first, Daylin was afraid that Duque would be too stingy. After all, his daughter had been forced onto him, and Duque was not too willing to accept it. Daylin really wanted to see if Duque valued his daughter from the gifts that her master had given her. Now that he knew that Duque had given him something priceless, Daylin started to complain about Antonidas. Oh, Antonidas, you're not being kind. That's a gift from Duque to me, and you still have the cheek to ask for it? Old Antonidas blushed, and then said bitterly and aggrievedly, please, it's not just me. Even those arrogant elven wizards, no, even if Anastrian was here, he would want it too. Because those two are wings of death's treasures. Oh my God. And they're even family heirlooms. As the authoritative pharaoh finished speaking, the noise in the banquet hall suddenly rose by more than one level. It was like a raging wave. The exclamations of the leaders of the alliance and the nobles even alerted the guards outside the door. A few paladins rushed into the banquet hall with the royal guards, and only retreated awkwardly when they saw that nothing was wrong. Wings of death, Nesario's treasures. Duque was really willing to part with it. When Jaina first received the pair of gloves, she instinctively felt that this pair of magic gloves was extraordinary. Jaina fell in love with the dark red background and mysterious purple-blue patterns at first glance. The moment she put it on, she felt that her magic circuits had at least doubled. Not only the capacity, but even the flow of mana had been greatly increased. Jaina could clearly feel that this was only a very, very small portion of the glove's power. Furthermore, there was a faint dragon's breath lingering around her fingers. This was not the corrosive dragon breath of the wings of death. This was the frost dragon breath that had been carefully purified and modified by some almighty being. For Jaina, who was only an earth mage, it was an unimaginable treasure. If that was the case, it wouldn't be considered a treasure of the wings of death. What shocked Jaina the most were the words, family heirloom. That's right. This pair of gloves was precious because it was a family heirloom. In other words, it did not limit the magic level of the user. Even the lowest level magic apprentice could wear it. Mages with a family heirloom would cultivate faster, and there was no need to worry about collecting the best magic equipment in the process of cultivation. This was because the attributes of the family heirloom would automatically unlock the seal layer by layer as the owner's magic level improved. Moreover, because the level of the heirloom itself was very high, there was no need to consider eliminating it before the owner reached the level that the equipment should have. Not to mention, it was an epic equipment that even Antonidas was jealous of. Originally, Jaina was dissatisfied with her father's unreasonable giving of a sword to Duque, allowing Duque to control her life and death after she violated the ban. However, in the face of Duque's precious super gift, Jaina's young heart fell a little. So brother Duque. Oh, teacher Duque still likes me very much. That sword is more of a formality. I won't violate the ban, so teacher won't use that sword to punish me. Jaina's pretty face was red from excitement. She raised her sharp chin and looked up at Duque's gentle and kind face. Teacher, what's the name of this pair of gloves? Duque said kindly, this pair of gloves has a very nice name. It's called, Misty Gloves. Blooming like fireworks and flowing like water? So nice. Thank you, teacher. I really, really like this pair of gloves. In order to express her excitement, Jaina used a total of 3 tens to describe her excitement. A certain someone laughed sinisterly in his heart. That's right. Misty, if you dare to mess around in the future, I'll light you up like a cigarette. On the other side, Ronan was so excited that he was about to cry. In this life, Ronan did not have the merit of being the main force that saved the Red Dragon Queen. Even though he did not kill any of his teammates this time, he was still not well received in the Dalajan. His days were miserable. Originally, Ronan had become Duque's disciple under Crace's suggestion, but he never thought that Duque would really take him in. He was already overjoyed that Duque had taken him in. Who would have thought that Duque would be so rich as to take out 2 rare treasures from the wings of death as gifts? Looking at the accessory that looked like half a small stone slab in his hands, Ronan was speechless for a long time. Even a magician's apprentice could feel the unparalleled power contained within it, as well as the mysterious mana amplification. This was not just a simple mana amplification. Ronan could feel that when he started casting spells, the accessory would give him more than just a single level of amplification. It might even give him 2 or 3 levels of amplification. This was a peerless treasure that any magician could only dream of. Teacher Duque actually gave such an amazing item away just like that. Just how much does teacher think of me? Tears were already welling up in Ronan's eyes. Teacher. Thank you. I. Unable to express his excitement with words, Ronan ran in front of Duque and kowtowed heavily. In this era, only the lowliest citizens would have to kowtow like this when they saw their leader. Even if Duque was a teacher, it was still a bit exaggerated. But everyone could understand. Behind King Daylin, Daylin's old lover and personal bodyguard, Gina Goldsword, did not hide her envy. She whispered into Daylin's ear, "I'm so jealous of Gina. If someone gave me this before I met you, I would sleep with them for the rest of my life, not to mention kowtowing." Dahlin knew that his old lover was joking, but he was still deeply touched. Duque helped Ronan up. "Get up. This accessory of yours is called Unruly Will. Just like Gina's, it's a rare treasure." Duque lied with a straight face. Chapter 646. An accessory that could temporarily increase intelligence every time a damaging spell was cast for 10 seconds, and could stack up to 10 times. Even if it seemed to be the same level as the glove next door, could its actual combat effect be the same? In the game, players would pray every week to open 3 of these items at once, and it was best to wear 2 at the same time. Would it be an ordinary item? Not to mention Ronan and Jaina, even Antonidas had never seen Unruly Will before. Only those who had used it knew that this was a divine item that mages of the same level could only dream of. Especially for a mage like Ronan, who had a high explosive hairstyle, it was like adding wings to a tiger. Anyone who touched this thing would be killed. Think about it, the guy opposite him had been holding his breath until his face was red, and he had held his breath to fire a 0.38 caliber pistol bullet. Who would have thought that the next moment, it would be a 0.5 caliber sniper rifle bullet, and the next moment, it would be a howitzer. Every time a spell was cast, the damage could be stacked, and the damage could be stacked 10 times in one go. Behind Duque's seemingly fair appearance, he was a classic case of favoritism. It wasn't just any ordinary favoritism, but a direct one, the kind of favoritism that could tip the scales. Everyone only knew that they were all from Nasario, but who knew that there were subdivided production versions of the same boss, ordinary version and elite version? Yes. Jaina's smoke glove was the production version, and Ronan's was the elite version. The Unruly Will of the same level, and Duque had another one on his waist. Duque didn't know why there were 2 identical Unruly Will on Deathwing. After he tried to wear both at the same time and failed, he simply did it as a favor. Anyway, it was definitely not a loss to give it to Ronan. Cough cough. Seeing Ronan kneel to him so sincerely, even the thick-skinned Duque felt a little hot. Thinking about it, Duque felt a little relieved. Not to mention anything else, even if he was biased, so what? Not every talented mage could have an heirloom modified from Deathwing's exquisite equipment. One had to know that the modifier was the Red Dragon Queen, life-giver Alexstrasza. And this was just something that a certain queen casually did. Although that fellow kept saying that there would be a heavy reward, Duque didn't even see what the hell the so-called heavy reward was until he left the Dragon Sleep Temple. Duque wasn't in a hurry. As long as his relationship with Alexstrasza and the Crimson Dragon Legion was solid enough, it would be fine. At this moment, everyone present applauded. Magni said carelessly, "All right. Even I, the king, am envious. The two of you are so lucky to have such a generous teacher." Croesus smiled at Ronan. "Congratulations, Ronan." "Yes, thank you." Ronan started crying. Dai Lin was both happy and a little jealous. Although he had pushed Jaina away for the stability and continuity of the kingdom, she was still his daughter. Seeing how well Duque treated her, Dai Lin felt a little sad. "Remember to listen to Teacher Duque." "Yes, father." Jaina replied softly. She then lowered her head and stared blankly at the magnificent and powerful pair of gloves. The banquet ended with a round of well wishes. From today onwards, Ronan and Jaina would follow Duque. Ronan had nothing to worry about, so he directly followed Duque to the state guest house in Stormwind. Jaina was a little more troublesome. She still had to move things from Dalajan to Karazhan, and she would meet up with Duque later. It was late at night. When Duque returned to his room, he was surprised to find that Alusia was helping him prepare the bed. This kind of thing can be left to the maids." Duque was a little embarrassed. "I don't feel safe leaving it to the maids of Lordaeron. This used to be done by Vanessa. She's not here, and I have nothing to do anyway, so I might as well do it." Alusia, who hadn't even changed out of her evening gown, rushed over and carefully made the bed. Duque felt a strange sense of warmth in his heart. "That's enough. The bed will be messy again in a while." Duque was speaking the truth. As a college pervert, as an evil person who didn't make his bed, he really didn't understand the meaning of making his bed. So, for a long time, his bed was a dog's kennel. "If the bed is clean and tidy, Aurelia and Miss Sasha will be happy," Alusia said calmly. What a good girl. If he hadn't met Aurelia before, Duque might have fallen in love with Alusia first. It was rare that Alusia came from a prestigious family, but she didn't put on airs at all. The inexplicable feeling in Duque's heart became more and more fervent. His arms crossed over the beautiful girl's shoulders and gently hugged Alusia from behind. Duque could feel the girl's body temperature rising rapidly in his arms. Duque opened his palm, revealing a strange ornament that looked like a ring. There was a cold and gentle electric light in the blue and white outer ring. "This is," right next to Alusia's ear, Duque's manly hot breath made the young lady of the Berev family go limp. "This is called capacitor. I got it when I joined forces with Lothar to kill a powerful demon in Karazhan. Although it's not a high-grade item, I think it suits you very well." "Really? Can I?" Alusia seemed to be in slight disbelief. Even her outstretched hands were trembling slightly. After taking the ornament from Duque's palm, she stared at it for a long time. Then, she clenched it tightly with both hands and placed it closest to her heart. Ugh! Duque didn't understand why Alusia was so excited. "I know very well that my talent in magic isn't very good. Mother said that I can still hope to become a Morning Star mage in this lifetime, but it's hard to hope for anything higher. I may not be of much help in the field of magic in the future, so I only pray that I can do what I can." Hearing this, Duque fell silent. That's right. Even in the original history, Alusia was only a third-rate boss in Scholomance. Compared to Ronan and Jaina, her talent was like the difference between a firefly and a star. If Duke Berev hadn't sold food to help the refugees of Stormwind, he wouldn't have met, gotten to know Alusia. It had been almost 3 years since he transmigrated to Azeroth. His growth had long left many of his contemporaries far behind, but Duque was very clear that he wasn't someone who didn't care about old friendships. At this moment, Alusia suddenly spoke. "Duque. If you think it's necessary to marry Miss Jaina, then just marry her. I'm a girl from a declining family. As long as I can have a small corner in your heart, I'll be satisfied." Duque was shocked. Chapter 647. He understood what was going on with Elusia's sadness. Elusia, who was born in the declining Bara family, immediately felt an instinctive sense of inferiority when she saw King Daelin of Kertira's cell Jaina. He had thought that she was a gentle woman like Sasha, but Duque now realized that Elusia, who was born in a noble family, was much more fragile than the women of the Windrunner family. The women of the Windrunner family were always full of confidence no matter what. Don't be fooled by Sasha's gentle appearance, but she was decisive on the battlefield. If Duke really died or ran off to become a ghoul, Sasha would definitely be the type of person who would kill the ghoul Duke even if she had to hold back her tears. Then, she would cry after the battle was over. Elusia obviously needed comfort. Duque hugged Elusia. I swear, I will never marry Jaina. Elusia shuddered. She could hardly believe what she had just heard. She really did not understand why Duque would not want the young and beautiful Jaina, who was noble and could be of help in politics. But in the next moment, Elusia's imagination filled in the blanks. Thank you, Duque. Even if it's a lie, I'm willing to die. She turned around and buried her head in Duque's chest. Duque had no one to argue with. From the first day he crossed over to Azeroth, Duque remembered one truth: the princesses of Azeroth were all frauds. From the female wild boar named Princess in the Elven Forest, to the bear princess Ji Song who was locked in a cage on Blood Island, to the earth princess Mizrael who cheated the orcs, to the Maraudon princess in the Kalimdor continent whose measurements were 40, 80, and 40, and finally to the seemingly normal princess Jaina who sold her father, there were countless examples of frauds. In any case, Elusia absolutely could not understand Duque's fear of princesses as if they were ghosts. Fortunately, this didn't hinder her from experiencing Duque's determination. Duque could feel that the heart of the beauty in his arms was completely intoxicated. If he wanted to push her down, she probably would not refuse. But the beast Duque's conscience was playing tricks on him. Even though Duque wasn't a good person, and he had fantasized about making a killing in 3 years and never losing money, when it came down to it, girls under the age of 18 were beyond his hunting range. Didn't you see that before you transmigrated, it was written that women must not be younger than 20 years old to get married? All right. Even if he transmigrated, he couldn't go against the country's policies. What if he had the chance to transmigrate back and write his story into a novel, but was banned? The author doesn't even have a place to cry. At this moment, Duque was an upright and reliable husband. At this moment, Duque was a man of integrity that everyone loved. Surprisingly, Duque really held back. He gently patted Elusia's back, comforting this sensitive girl. Leaning against Duque's chest, Elusia could clearly feel Duque's excitement and calmness again. She slowly raised her head and stared into Duque's deep black eyes. Her face was full of shyness. Duque, actually Duque shook his head gently, then blew into Elusia's ear. I promise you, when you turn 18, I will give you a real coming-of-age ceremony. This time, Elusia's pretty face was really red. She slowly closed her eyes. I want a promise from you, not just a verbal promise. How could Duque not understand? He directly pressed his lips against hers. A French kiss was enough to make this little girl infatuated. Duque teased, it's obviously a verbal promise. Elusia was so embarrassed that she ran away as fast as she could. Watching the beauty's back disappear from his sight, Duque turned his head and immediately face-bombed. Damn, do you have to be so elusive? What appeared in his field of vision were 2 pairs of long white legs unique to the High Elves. The Windrunner sisters were actually sitting on the beam of the room. When did you come in? Aurelia pretended to use her right index finger to point at her sharp chin. She looked like she was thinking, then turned her head to ask her third sister, yes. When did we come in? Sasha smiled like a flower, since little Elusia folded the quilt. Pfft. Duque spurted out. What the hell, didn't that mean that they were here from the beginning? Duque complained, don't scare me. Why did you hide on the beam with your aura covered? We didn't hide. We were up there the whole time. Who told you to not look at us and jump on little Alusia the moment you entered the room? Aurelia was happy to see Duque embarrassed. Sister said that she wanted to see if you were infatuated with little Jaina. Sasha unceremoniously sold her sister out. Sister, don't think that you can sell me out just because you're my sister. Aurelia pretended to wave her little fist. Help, Duque, sister wants to deal with me. With that, Sasha screamed and jumped down. A gust of wind carried her slender body, and Sasha slowly floated down. Even with Duque's small body, he could easily princess carry Sasha and protect her. Looking at Sasha's pair of smooth calves swinging on the right side of his field of vision, Duke laughed. Don't be jealous. How can you guys miss out on a share of Necesario's good stuff? Duque waved his hand, and took out a pair of boots that were not very bright from his dimensional bag. But Duque knew that Sasha would like them. As a ranger who needed to hide, bright colors were not practical. This pair of boots with a brown base was not as good as the green ones, but they were quite good. This is the boots of dreams. They're definitely much better than your superior ones. Sasha did not go down. She just picked up the boots in Duque's arms and put them on. This is great. I feel much lighter. Where's mine? Aurelia sat on the beam, her fingers crossed under her chin as she gazed at her lover. Duque threw a belt over, and Aurelia caught it. This is best friend's belt. Oh. By the sun, well, are we only best friends? I'm so sad. Aurelia went into acting mode, looking heartbroken. Duque's face darkened, but on second thought, he also looked sad. I used to think of you as a big sister, as my best friend. Who knew that you would use your amazing beauty to seduce me? I was just a kid back then. You actually did such a vicious thing. Duque was so sincere. If one did not know the truth, they would really think that Aurelia was a female pervert. Pfft. This time, it was Sasha's turn to laugh so hard that her stomach cramped. Aurelia looked embarrassed and angry. You little bastard. You took advantage of us, and you're still being sarcastic? You're great. I'll come down and kill you right now. The three of them immediately laughed together. Chapter 648. The whole night was filled with fairies fighting. Oh, fighting fairies. The sun rose, and the cold morning wind blew away the dark clouds. The rising sun reluctantly rose over the Alterac Mountains, and the warm sunlight shone into the room, waking Duque up. Aurelia was still sleeping soundly on the right, and there was a satisfied smile on her lips. No matter how many times Duque looked at her, he would always be fascinated by her alluring mix of nobility and wildness. Beside him, Sasha's long legs clamped onto Duque's thighs. Duque smiled, and moved his body a few times to free himself from the elastic thighs. Duque's getting up did not wake the two sisters up. After losing Duque as a human pillow, Sasha unconsciously moved to the right and hugged her sister. Aurelia seemed to be subconsciously used to her sister's actions. After a whimper, she hugged her sister with one hand. After Duque washed up, he went out and saw Alusia, Gavin Rad, and the captain of his knights, Casa, waiting outside. Make an appointment for me with His Majesty Rin, Commander Lothar, and Archbishop Fail. 2 hours later, everyone was present. Do you really not need more people to clean up Karazhan? Lang asked with concern. Duque shook his head. No need. Karazhan is too narrow, and there are too many people. After all, it's my own territory. I know what I'm doing. Andoan's loud voice sounded. Duque is right. That damned place, it's useless to have too many people there. Besides, these elites can protect themselves anywhere in the world, let alone Karazhan. Looking around, Duque's Karazhan raid team was gorgeous. The warrior and main tank was Muradin Bronzebeard, who had run over after hearing the news. The vanguard was Gavin Rad and Tyrion Fordring, 2 first-generation paladins. The thief was Edwin Van Cleef. The long-range team was the 3 Windrunner sisters, plus the 2 mages, Duque and Ronan. The healer was Stormwind City's Holy Light Bishop Benedict. Duque took a look and laughed so hard that his stomach was about to burst. These were elites? Damn, he was clearly pulling a bunch of heroes and leader bosses to fight another bunch of bosses. Perhaps only Duque would be able to do something so deranged. If these guys were in their heyday in the future, Duque would definitely not need the help of the 4 great dragon kings. He would just lead them to torture Nesario to death. At this moment, they still had serious expressions on their faces. Muradin and the 2 paladins were repeatedly checking their hammers and shields. Edwin carefully smeared poison on his dagger. This was the first time Duque had summoned him after recovering all of Stormwind. For a while, Edwin almost thought that he'd lost Duque's attention and was a bit depressed. Now that Duque had summoned him to clean up Karazhan, of course Edwin was excited. The 3 Windrunner sisters all had different reactions. Sylvanas and Sasha couldn't wait to see the creatures and enemies of the other world, while Aurelia acted like a big sister, warning them not to be careless. Ronan was nervously revising the magic in his magic book. After seeing the War with Dragons, he was already considered experienced, but when he heard about monsters coming out of the spatial rift, he couldn't help but feel nervous again. On the contrary, Bishop Benedict was the calmest. He looked like he was ready to fool people with holy light at any time. Beside him, Alicia was a little worried. Duque, you gave me your accessory. What are you going to use? Duque patted his waist. This is Cruel's Ruse. This is the same as Ronan's Unruly Will. They're both products of Nesario. I guarantee it with absolute confidence. Only then did Alicia feel relieved. Don't worry about this guy. No matter who dies, it won't be him. Aurelia had her hands on her hips. For some reason, whenever this topic was brought up, Aurelia would always think of Duque's fake death twice. If she hadn't personally confirmed that Duque was a living person, perhaps even she would have thought that Duque was some kind of undead. Alright, be careful. Don't worry. I still have a team of Einherjar and a powerful mechanical construct in Karazhan. If not, I can call for help. Duque waved a necklace around his neck. The necklace itself was plain, but there were red scales where the necklace was. The teleportation door opened. The cleanup team entered in a single file. After becoming a Radiant Moon Archmage, Duque's teleportation door had become more stable. During the teleportation process, there was only a slight tremor. It was not even comparable to riding a horse. In his field of vision, everything stretched out, and the surrounding scenery became strange and blurry. The Windrunner sisters, who had experienced many teleportations, did not feel anything, but Muradin and Edwin, who were teleporting for the first time, vomited almost as soon as they stepped out of the teleportation door. As soon as he stepped out of the door, Duque saw Khadgar in his soul form. Master, you're finally back. We can't hold on any longer. Woo-woo. I'm back. Duque comforted Khadgar. Although Khadgar's behavior was a little funny, Duque also felt that he had let Khadgar down. During the entire World War II at the Dark Portal, Duque had only returned to Karazhan a few times. If not for Khadgar leading the Einherjar to maintain control of the Wizard Tower, Duque would not have been able to trick the group of wizards into coming here. Duque did a quick check. During Lothar's raid on Karazhan, the bosses they had defeated were Atumen the Hunter, Moros the Butler, Evil Hoof, Chess, and Prince. Mediva's late father, Alan, had already disappeared after blocking the curse for Duque. The curator was controlled by Duque. In reality, there were not many boss-level monsters left. If it was the Earth Wizard Duque from before, it would definitely be difficult. But now, Duque was really used to train his troops. A demon that Alexstrasza had specifically reminded him of was definitely not some random person. But, who could it be? Duque repeatedly compared the demons in his memory with names, his mind in a mess. In reality, the demons in Azeroth were not called demons. To be precise, they were a race called Eridar. This highly intelligent humanoid race did not come from the world of Azeroth or Draenor. They came from an ancient and faraway world called Argus. When Sardras was fighting against the Dreadlord, he was affected by the mind manipulation spell. After that, he began to doubt his own divine life. He persuaded Kil'jaeden and Archimonde, one of the three heads of Eridar, and Eridar split up. The more righteous prophet Willan left with his people and ran to Draenor to seek refuge. Those Eridar people later became the Draenei. As for the remaining Eridar people who followed the two Burning Legion commanders, they began to be called Man'ari, which were the demons in the eyes of the people of Azeroth. Chapter 649. By the way, Duque, your army isn't weak at all. Why can't you take down the second level? Aurelia asked head butler Khadgar, whom Duque had arranged to stay in Karazhan, as they passed through the ballroom on the second level of Karazhan. This was not Aurelia's fault. The other members of the team had the same question as well. There were more than 100 people in the team, and it felt like any one of them could easily take down a team of royal knights. There was also Khadgar, the ghost butler with unknown strength. There was also a mysterious golem called Curator. Strong no matter how one looked at it. Khadgar's face suddenly showed a sad expression. Those demons. Those damn demons. We can't fight them at all. Curator is too big, we can't go in. This has nothing to do with combat power, it's just, sob. They bullied me. After saying this, Khadgar actually ran away in tears. The accompanying Einherjars also had strange expressions on their faces. They all stayed on the second level and refused to move. Master, we can't fight against those demons, but with Lady Windrunner and the other ladies here, there shouldn't be a problem, right? What's the problem? Sasha asked curiously. It had been a long time since he had returned, and Duque's memories were a little fuzzy. But when he went up the stairs and heard a flirtatious and seductive female voice coming from the corridor ahead, the dust-covered memories reopened. Damn it. No wonder that brat Khadgar lost so badly. Why isn't that Khadgar coming? Things just got interesting the last time. Sigh. It's always over so quickly. A ghost mage, well, the process itself is quite interesting. Looking at the flirtatious female attendants in revealing clothes not far from the guest hall, Duque's side thought of Khadgar's escape, and a few men laughed shamelessly. Duque was speechless. He face-bombed, not wanting to say anything. Wow. Gavin Rad whistled. I like this style, it's a pity, that's right. What a pity. The female attendants at the front were extremely attractive. They had round faces, perky buttocks, and long white legs. They had everything that should be there. They were definitely in line with the visual sense of a normal man. Coquettish sluts could attract men's attention no matter where they were. If they weren't succubi. At this moment, the three Windrunner sisters surrounded Duque. Aurelia rolled her eyes. Fortunately, I've been by your side for the past year. Otherwise, would have doubted your taste. This time, Sasha did not compromise. Humph. If you bring such a fellow into the house, my sister and I will leave at once. Duque surrendered. Please, this is Karazhan, the connecting point of countless voids. It wasn't strange for any kind of person to come out. Leave this kind of woman for Gavin Rad. Gavin Rad immediately protested, Hey. I'm a first-generation holy knight. As someone with an incomparably noble character and sentiments, only a woman who also emits holy light can move my heart. Oh, she must have a good figure. I don't want a beautiful woman who doesn't conform to the golden ratio. Hee. Duque shamelessly smiled mysteriously. Aurelia raised the hunting bow in her hand and seemed to be pointing at something. Then, Duque, you don't mind if I get rid of these pretty vases, right? Why would I have any objections? Succubi were extremely lethal to every male. Men would always find it hard to resist charm-type skills. It seemed like Khadgar's moral integrity was lost here and could not be retrieved. But Duke didn't understand. Why didn't Khadgar's soul scatter and scatter? What the three Windstalker sisters practiced was the lying corpse archery. After a wave of shio sounds, Gavin Rad watched with regret as those balls, butts, and legs all turned into raging flames, disappearing from his field of view. Everyone continued down the corridor. After clearing out the phantom guardians in 2 rooms, a dignified female voice suddenly sounded. Intruders. Your actions are unforgivable. Impure thoughts will lead to blasphemous actions. You must be purified. Come, let me, as the saintess of chastity, be your opponent. Muradin and Edwin, who were leading the charge, were stunned. The next second, the bastard dwarf pointed to the front shamelessly. There, Gavin Rad, your favorite woman who emits holy light, is here. Do you want to talk to her? Just one look, and Gavin Rad felt unwell. Damn. What the hell was that? It was true that she emitted holy light. The golden ratio was true. It was also true that she was a woman. And the saintess of chastity. But, why the hell were you a 10-meter-tall stone giant? What happened to the fun and flirting? Gavin Rad, who had always thought of himself as elegant, was petrified. A gust of wind blew, and everyone seemed to see Gavin Rad's soul dissipate with the wind. The female giant was very tall, and she was in a huge hall at the end of the corridor. The thick pillars in the middle of the hall seemed to have some mysterious power that prevented the female giant from walking out. What do we do? Everyone looked at Duque. Duque shrugged. There's nothing we can do. The demon army is about to attack, and I have to eliminate all the unstable factors in Karazhan. Although it's a bit unfair to Gavin Rad's girlfriend, I can only ask her to destroy it. Hey. Who's my girlfriend? Don't think you can say whatever you want just because you're my boss. You have a princess as your fiancée, and I'm still single. Gavin Rad's threatening roar was ignored. Duque commanded, everyone, spread out. Since the opponent is holy, she might have AoE skills like devotion that can penetrate the ground with holy light. The saintess of chastity. This was a dummy boss that could be defeated with one's eyes closed. Duque didn't feel anything for this female boss who was surrounded by a group of succubi for some reason. With a command, everyone rushed forward, sharpening their weapons to defeat the boss. Another accident happened. Are you, an emissary of the holy light? Without any reaction to Muradin's shield strike on her calf, the holy maiden of chastity knelt on one knee and stared at Gavin Rad with shining golden eyes. Huh. Gavin Rad's face was full of confusion. Tyrion Fordring raised his long 2-handed hammer. Yes. He and I are both first-generation paladins who have inherited the holy light, the Azeroth. The holy maiden of chastity nodded. I'm so happy to meet companions who believe in the same holy power in different worlds. It seems that you are not my enemy. My name is Jenna Christian. What's your name? Gavin Rad's mind was in a mess, and he answered almost subconsciously, Gavin Rad Bad Luck. Looking at the harmonious exchange of questions and answers, Muradin turned his head. Gavin Rad, how dare you say she's not your girlfriend? Chapter 650. Dwarves were all straightforward people. Unless it involved secrets, they would usually say whatever they thought. Otherwise, why would the gun called Dwarf Fishing Rod be so famous? Muradin's big mouth pushed Gavin Rad directly onto the fire. Apart from Theon, after a brief moment of confusion, almost everyone held in their laughter until they suffered internal injuries. Gavin Rad was also a big mouth. He had just finished talking about his criteria for choosing a girlfriend, and then a boss that fit his criteria jumped out. He really deserved it. Gavin Rad almost had the urge to kill him. But the bastard Duque continued to push the poor paladin into the fire with a straight face. In order to face the coming demon army, we must unite all holy forces. Gavin Rad, Theon, I'll leave the task of communicating with her to you. Yes. Theon straightened his back. Yes. Gavin Rad looked like he was going to a funeral. The female giant Jenna did not seem to notice Duque's shenanigans. Instead, she knelt down excitedly and asked the two paladins all sorts of questions. Duque casually said, "I wish you all happiness." Then Duque patted his butt and left. This was a small step for Gavin Rad to sacrifice himself, but it was also a big step for the great cause of the Holy Light. Ah! May the Holy Light fool you. If in the future, books like Interracial Love Under the Banner of the Way of the Holy Light or The Unspeakable Story of the First Paladin and the Female Giant of Holy Light appeared in Azeroth, or even tricked the rookie paladins later on, Duque said that it had absolutely nothing to do with him. After leaving the hall, the bastards finally could not hold it in and burst into laughter. Ha ha ha. I'm dying of laughter. I want to ask, if Gavin Rad and that Jenna had a child, how tall would his child be? Muradin was the first to fire. Ronan replied stupidly, generally speaking, it seems difficult to have children of different races. But there are exceptions. For example, Miss Jessie Farrell in the Stormwind Fleet has dwarven blood. And elves and humans can also give birth to half-elves. Humans and female giants might also be possible. Luo Ning was truly stupid, but in the ears of others, it sounded like Luo Ning was seriously insulting Gavin Rad. For some reason, the three Windrunner sisters blushed when they heard the word half-elf. Of course, except for Benedict, the Bishop of Holy Light, the focus of their discussion naturally fell on the immoral topic of how humans could have children with stone giants. Without two holy knights, the vanguard of the team was much weaker. But it was not important. After dealing with the succubus disguised as a maid, Karthika and his heroic army returned to the battlefield. Khadgar led more than 100 translucent Einarjars and fought against the ghostly guests who were wandering around the ballroom and on the way to the opera house. Duque breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, he was still a bit unsure about clearing out Karazhan. This was Azeroth in real life. It wasn't a game that simply ranked the strong and the weak. The people around him had all stepped into the realm of heroes. It could be said that apart from Luo Ning, who was still a sky mage, none of them were weak. On the other hand, their bodies could not be as strong and durable as in the game. Perhaps in the game, every powerful leader could withstand the attacks of hundreds of top players. Unfortunately, this was reality. After seeing Anduin and Orgrim injure each other so easily, Duque understood. Perhaps they had extraordinary reflexes and strength, and could use mysterious powers that transcended the mortal world, but deep down, they were still weak mortals. The priests in this world did not have any resurrection spells. The only one who could resurrect a person was Duque. Sighing, Duque and the others had arrived at the opera house in Karazhan. Wow! So beautiful. After this place is cleaned up, can we enjoy the opera here? Sasha shook Duque's arm excitedly. Duque laughed. Of course. After dealing with the attack of the demons, you sisters can decorate the place however you want. Along the way, the ghost audience and ghost servants had all been killed by the Einarjars. Unlike monsters in the real world, ghosts usually wouldn't leave any traces after they disappeared. What appeared in front of the adventurer team was a slightly dilapidated opera house. The scale of the opera house was so large that it was comparable to the Sydney Opera House before Duque traveled to this world. Yes, it was a smaller version. The middle of the horseshoe-shaped hall was for ordinary people to sit in. The three sides of the hall were VIP seats that were 3 levels high. Looking at the expensive satin decorations and the beautiful tables, chairs, and tableware, it was not hard to imagine the grand occasion when King Lang and Anduin brought a large group of nobles from Stormwind to watch the opera. This was an era where entertainment was scarce. Other than the low-level clowns and bards who would perform in the market, the biggest entertainment for the nobles was the opera. It was true that the Windrunner sisters were rangers, but where did Aurelia's elegance and beautiful harp skills come from? She had also gone through strict etiquette training and a long period of musical training. Suddenly, the melodious sound of the organ reverberated in everyone's ears. Following the direction of the music, Duque, and the others found that Cervantes had sat on the huge organ on the left side of the stage. Queen Sylvanus's slender fingers danced across the keys, producing beautiful notes. In a trance, everyone saw a lush green forest, smelled the fragrance of flowers mixed with the fragrance of the earth, and heard the chirping of birds echoing in the forest. Everyone was mesmerized by it. Before they knew it, the song had ended. It was not just Duque and the others, even the Einherjars gave Cervantes a warm applause. Cervantes sighed. Duque, you have so many good things here. There are only 2 such national treasures in the whole of Cuel Salis. Duque shrugged. If you like it, you can come here every day. I won't be in your way. Queen Sylvanus rolled her eyes at Duque with a complicated expression. Humph. Duque was a little confused. He turned to Aurelia and asked, "Did I piss her off?" Aurelia covered her mouth and snickered. "I won't tell you my sister's secret." "Look, Duque, can I go on the stage?" Windsor pointed excitedly at the huge stage that was covered by a red curtain, her hands waving. Chapter 651. That stage. It had been so easy to get here that Duque had almost forgotten about the stage. Coming back to his senses, Duque immediately stopped Sasha. "Wait, I sense a strong presence behind the curtains." Perhaps Duque's expression was too real, or perhaps Duque was too cool. The moment Duque finished speaking, Edwin Van Cleef's expression changed. The 3 Windrunner sisters' expressions changed as well. It would be their fault if they failed to find the enemy. "My apologies, Grand Duke, Edwin immediately apologized. Duque waved his hand. "It's not your fault. You are not the master of Karazhan. You cannot understand the spatial structure here. It's another world behind the curtains." Even with Duque's words, everyone stopped underestimating him. Just now, the curtains were less than 5 meters away from the audience. Because they were surrounded by Einherjars, everyone was more relaxed. Even Benedict, who was the core of the team and should be protected, was exposed in front of the stage. At this point in time, many powerful healing spells for holy knights had not been developed, and there were no holy knights who specialized in spiritual healing spells. The druids from the Night Elves had not joined the alliance yet. The priest was the main healer of the team. It was hard to imagine that if 2 arrows were shot from behind the curtains, the team would collapse. The only good thing was that this was Duque's home field. At least there was a way out. After a while, Gavin Rad and Tyrion arrived. "She agreed?" Duque asked. "Yes, Lady Christine was thrown here by the spatial turbulence. Even she doesn't know the way back. If it's to fight against evil demons, she's willing to be the protector of Karazhan," Gavin Rad replied seriously. The atmosphere had been good. The Bronzebeard family's big mouth had easily stepped on a certain holy knight's tail. "TCH. I thought she agreed to your proposal." "Muradin, you bastard. I'll duel you when we get out." Gavin Rad was furious. "Let's duel then, who's afraid of who?" Muradin was also stubborn. "All right, after we get out, it's up to you how you want to fight, but for now, don't cause any more trouble." If you really want to duel, I'll be the one to decide the weapon." Duque suppressed the 2 clowns with a single sentence. At this time, Khadgar returned. "We've cleared the ghost actors ahead, but we can't find the way. A strange spatial layer had sealed off the original path. And we found a strange spirit." "A special ghost?" Sasha's eyes lit up. "No, it should be said that the eyes of the 3 Windrunner sisters were frighteningly bright. It was difficult for them to resist the temptation of new things." Following the passage on the right side of the opera house, Duque and the rest followed the only passage to the backstage of the stage. At the end of the passage, they saw a male ghost announcer in formal attire. Unlike the other spirits, his soul seemed to be in a completely different space from the adventurer team. No matter if they tried to touch or use elemental power to attack, they all ended up missing. However, everyone noticed that this strange spirit would ask every once in a while, "Are you new actors? Damn it, I've already informed Master that the previous scenes were all done badly. We need a new script, new opponents, and new scenes." "We're here to kill all of you messy people," Muradin replied directly. There was no response. "The holy light guided us here. We need to clear out the evil here," Benedict said. "How much do you need to tip to open the door next to you?" Edwin tried to solve the problem in a thief's way. "Duque, don't expect us sisters to seduce you," Sasha said. "Duque, the spirits." At this time, it was Sylvanas who stepped forward. She flipped her long blonde hair and put one hand on her waist. "Yes. We are the new actors. Let's start the next scene." Seeing Queen Sylvanas' performance, Duque silently gave her a thumbs up. "Yes." Duque, who was familiar with the strategy of Karazhan, knew very well that this was the key to solving the mystery. Upon hearing Queen Sylvanas' words, the announcer, who seemed to be in a daze, suddenly became spirited. He pulled up his collar, and his formal coat instantly transformed into a luxurious black tuxedo as if water had been poured over it. "Please follow me." As soon as he said this, the door to the stage, which had been connected to the entire subspace, opened silently. Duque said, "Follow him and get ready for battle." The ghost announcer's steps were elegant and steady. One could imagine how much effort he had put into etiquette training when he was alive. Walking to the center of the nearly 40-meter wide stage, he turned to the already empty auditorium and said loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's performance. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's performance. Tonight, we will see a love that has been thwarted in every possible way. However, as you all know, not all love has a perfect ending. Sometimes, love is as dangerous as thorns. Hearsay is false, but seeing is believing. When two people who love each other meet tonight, what kind of tragedy will unfold? Let's wait and see." Now, the performance begins. Duque, who had played Karazhan countless times in the past, knew almost as soon as he heard the opening remarks that the bosses this time were Romeo and Juliet. There would be 3 random scenes on the stage every time. Each scene corresponded to a different boss. The most classic opera Romeo and Juliet was the easiest of the 3 scenes to deal with. As long as the boss of this adulterous couple dies within 5 seconds, it will be considered a pass. At this time, the red curtain began to rise slowly. Muradin, who was standing at the front of the team, slapped his shield with a one-handed hammer, making a loud clang. "You guys hide behind me and attack without worry. I, Muradin, will be your shield and protect you." The outermost curtain rose, and when there was only a transparent white gauze curtain left, the light inside lit up, and a slim figure of a woman appeared in everyone's sight. She raised her right hand in a graceful gesture as if complaining about herself, and opened her palm as if to welcome the snowflakes falling from the sky. Juliet opened her mouth. "Oh, what kind of demon is love, to torment me like this? Oh, Romeo, my Romeo, where are you?" Such a classic line. Muradin was like a bull chewing on peonies. There's no such nonsense in the love of dwarves. Just as everyone was listening attentively to the next line or preparing to deal with the changes in the next scene, Muradin suddenly, poof. After a burst of white smoke came out of his body, he turned into a cute little girl in red. Chapter 652. Huh. Muradin was a super muscular dwarf. How did he suddenly turn into a Red Riding Hood? Muradin was not some cannon fodder. He was a royal dwarf. There were hundreds of thousands of bronze-bearded dwarves, and besides his brother, he was the best fighter. With deity's descent, all his stats would increase exponentially, and all his resistances would multiply. When deity's descent was activated, he was the synonym of invincibility. In the great battle, Muradin had fought countless orcs. But now, Muradin had actually turned into a little girl with a Red Riding Hood. What the hell was this? Sorcery? Secret technique? Wasn't it supposed to be the love between a beautiful woman and a handsome man? Where was the promised Romeo and Juliet? This time, not only the others, but even Duque was shocked. Because behind the rapidly rising curtain, Duque saw the figure of an incomparably majestic werewolf. There was also a large number of oddly shaped snuff bosses behind him. Juliet appeared as an undead boss, an undead girl named Dorothy, a lion man, a tin woodman, a scarecrow, and a witch. For some reason, the handsome Romeo was nowhere to be seen. All the bosses, big and small, were charging over. Chaos. It was all chaos. Originally, only one of the three groups of bosses would randomly appear in the Karazhan Opera House. These three groups of bosses represented the three classical operas that had somehow transmigrated to the world of Azeroth: the Big Bad Wolf and Little Red Riding Hood, Romeo and Juliet, and the Wizard of Oz. But now, it was clear that there were three groups of bosses playing at the same time. This meant that Duque's hero team would have to face three groups of bosses at once. Protect Master Khadgar, who was outside the stage, was the first to react. With a wave of his hand, at least 20 Einherjars rushed onto the stage. Bang! With a bang, Khadgar's magic and the charging Einherjars were all repelled in an instant. No one is allowed to disturb this sacred performance. No one would have thought that the announcer would easily block the way of Duke's helpers. At this moment, the announcer was like a god. Master Duque. Khadgar could only stand outside the arena and worry like a madman, unable to do anything. Duque's voice immediately became everyone's highest order. Everyone, scatter. Muradin, run around the stage. Benedict, heal the dwarf. Tyrion, stand against the prettiest. Gavin Rad, hold the Tin Woodman. The Windrunner sisters took turns fearing the lion. Leave the rest to me. Everyone, attack the little girl who shot the frost arrow. No one understood why they had to do this, but in the face of these thick-skinned enemies, everyone felt weak. Duque's voice became the only thing they could rely on. Oh. Damn it, damn it, damn it. I swear I'll never steal my brother's wine again. The domineering Muradin just now had been transformed into Little Red Riding Hood, running around with his transformed little arms and legs. A huge werewolf chased after him, slashing at him. Ah! It hurts. The strange transformation spell turned Muradin's insanely hard and thick adamantine plate armor into mere decorations. He felt like a little girl with her hands tied, and in the face of the evil big bad wolf's molestation, he could only scream and run away brainlessly. This feeling was so suffocating. So was Tyrion. He had killed countless orcs, be it male or female orc warriors. But when he smashed his hammer against Juliet's delicate human female face, he almost couldn't do it. The only good thing was that the holy light clearly told him that the woman in front of him was a ghost. Exorcism. Dazzling golden holy light suddenly exploded, attaching itself to the hammer and blasting at Juliet. Unexpectedly, as an undead, Juliet could also use holy light. And it was a healing spell? Holy light above, could undead also use holy light to heal their companions? Tyrion almost bit off his tongue. The next moment, a chaotic arcane aura suddenly appeared, forcibly disrupting Juliet's healing spell. Tyrion turned his head slightly and caught a glimpse of Duque, who had just retracted his palm. Counter magic? When all the attackers concentrated their firepower on the seemingly weak girl, Dorothy, Duque was the busiest one. As soon as he interrupted Juliet's healing, the other side released no less than 10 flame blasts with Hand of Magic, forcibly turning the scarecrow into a human-shaped torch, blindly bumping around. Not only that, but a well-timed Frost Nova had also blasted a handsome male undead thief out of the dungeon. At this moment, the undead thief stood less than 2 meters behind Benedict, the Bishop of Holy Light. The air was almost completely occupied by Duque's Hand of Magic, and the huge Hand of Magic was performing multiple spells at the same time. Hundreds of flame blasts formed in the illusory arcane palm, each huge fireball enough to make one's heart palpitate. The 8 seconds of casting time, in the fierce melee, seemed to be over in the blink of an eye. However, when the sky full of fire crashed down, even the faces of Duque's own people instantly turned pale. Rumble. In his field of vision, huge fireballs whizzed past. In the first second, Dorothy was killed. In the second second, Dorothy's dog was also blasted to death. In the third second, the scarecrow fell with a crash, burned to ashes by the flames. In the fourth second, the lion was jointly taken down by the Windrunner sisters and Duque. In the fifth second, the Tin Man was smashed into pieces by at least 30 fireballs in one go. In the sixth second, the witch followed in the footsteps of the other characters in The Wizard of Oz. If it was the Duque of the past, he would never have been able to make 108 hand of magic cast flame blasts at the same time. Just the upper limit of his magic power was far from enough, but after advancing to Radiant Moon, the abundant magic power gave Duque an almost infinite ability to fire. But the crisis was not over, because Muradin had changed back, but this time, it was the Bishop of Holy Light who turned into Little Red Riding Hood. He did not react at all, nor did he realize that after turning into Little Red Riding Hood, he could almost double his movement speed. Protection blessing. On the other side, Gavin Rad reacted the fastest, and immediately cast this divine skill to save the situation. The rich holy light turned into a solid shield, suddenly propped up around Benedict's body. The big bad wolf's huge claws scraped against the holy light shield, making an unpleasant sound like scratching glass. However, no matter how much the big bad wolf waved its claws wildly, releasing more than 30 claw attacks in a mere few seconds, the big bad wolf returned with nothing. We can win. Just as everyone in the team had the same thought, an extremely terrifying stench was released from the audience seats outside the stage. That was the aura of a great demon. Chapter 653. The division of the Eridar race had already happened more than 20,000 years ago. It was long enough for one race to evolve or degenerate into another. That was why the exiled Drenii and Manari, who were later known as demons, had different physical characteristics. The most obvious difference was that Drenii did not have wings. In front of them, the entire opera house and even all of Karazhan was shaking. If it was a normal person, they would not even be able to stand properly. Under everyone's shocked gazes, a portal that looked like a black hole suddenly opened in the ordinary auditorium of the opera house. Countless items and wooden benches that were more than 5 meters long were all sucked in. Not only the first floor, but also the curtains hanging on the huge pillars, the decorations on the balconies of the second and third floors, and the mess of tableware and wine utensils were all sucked into the air. This scene was like the end of the world. When the violent shaking stopped, a huge pure black portal with a diameter of at least 40 meters officially opened. The huge demon on the other side of the portal had not yet completely arrived in this world, but one could already hear his beastly roar. For the army. For kill, Jaden. When Duque heard this, his face darkened. Just from this slogan that he had heard countless times, he knew exactly which big demon had come, the wild boss Kazak who had tricked countless teams in the game. At this moment, if Duque still did not understand everything, then Duque was an idiot. He had been tricked. Ever since he had tricked Sargeras, the Burning Legion had long regarded him as a great enemy. The invasion of Karazhan this time was also a conspiracy that did not exist in the original history. First, he had a big demon touch the spatial barrier of the world of Azeroth, gently provoking the nerves of the dragon aspects. It sent a signal that said, "I may come to attack you, be prepared." Then, when Duque came to deal with the outside, he first had to deal with the inside, and the spy hidden in Karazhan made his move. Duque did not know who the demon was or where it was, but it must be in Karazhan. Otherwise, there was no way to explain why Kazak would come when he had brought a group of Alliance heroes to clean up Karazhan. Perfect timing, perfect conspiracy. In the end, as long as Duque and the others were all killed here, Karazhan would become another bridgehead for the Burning Legion to attack the world of Azeroth. Defending a dark portal that could be activated at any time had already exhausted the Alliance's energy. What about another Karazhan that could attack at any time? This horrifying scene was unimaginable. At this time, Duque saw that his Einarjar soldiers had already rushed to the front, ready to fight to the death. Duque admired the courage of these brave soldiers, but not this time. Retreat! Retreat! All Einherjar, retreat! The opponent was Soul Catcher, Kazakh. Let the curator and the virgin saintess come. Soul Catcher was a name Duke made up. However, Kazakh had a skill called Soul Capture. If any person or monster was near Kazakh during the battle, Kazakh would immediately resurrect on the spot with Faith Spring, instantly restoring his HP to full. Back then, Duke had suffered the most because Kazakh had dropped a very important item. As a result, the entire guild had no choice but to fight him with their lives on the line. Duke didn't know if the Kazakh of this world had such a shameless move, but it was better to believe it than to not believe. It was definitely not wrong. Let's go. Khadgar's handsome face was filled with unwillingness. Out of trust in Duque, he gestured, and the Einherjar soldiers quickly retreated from the opera house. It was the end of the world outside, but there was also a fierce battle inside. Without Duque's urging, almost everyone was using all their strength to attack. Thanks to Duque and Ronan's crazy firepower, the 6 bosses of the Wizard of Oz had already fallen. Don't panic. Control Romeo and Juliet, kill the werewolves first. If you can't catch the werewolves, open fire. No one knew how Duque knew how to deal with the enemies, but this did not affect their trust in Duque. If not for Duque's command, the team would have been reduced when the enemies swarmed them. Everyone was in a sorry state, and the big demon that was about to come out made everyone nervous. But these were all heroes in the alliance, and the more nervous they were, the calmer they were. Seeing that they could not help, Gavin, Rad and Theon looked at each other and used sanction to knock Romeo and Juliet unconscious. F***CK. The 5 Silver Saints were so strong that they could even knock out bosses. At this time, it was Sylvanas's turn to become Little Red Riding Hood. Looking at the dignified Queen Sylvie turning into a little blonde loli, Duke actually had the mood to burst into laughter. Queen Sylvanas used the agility of a ranger to escape while glaring at Duque. Duke snickered, but his hands did not hold back. Everyone, open fire. Aurelia and Sasha immediately used rapid shooting. A purplish-blue arcane light erupted from Duque and Ronan's bodies like a volcanic eruption. Ronan used the ultimate arcane skill, Arcane Energy. Duque used the top-tier metamagic ability, Arcane Energy Storm. But after Duque became a Radiant Moon Archmage, the effect changed. After activation, spell damage would increase by 200%, mana consumption would increase by 100%, and the effect would last for 20 seconds. The power and mana consumption would increase, but the duration had to be shortened. This was because such a terrifying ultimate skill was a huge burden even for a Radiant Moon Mage's magic circuit. At the same time, the accessories on their bodies were activated again. Chapter 654. History often said that Sylvanas was the most rebellious among the Windrunner sisters. Duque did not feel anything about that, but he did now. I haven't hit your head yet, have I? Why are you panicking? Duque could not stand Aurelia and Sasha's nervousness, as if the one who was going to kill Sylvanas was not the ferocious wolf behind her, but Duque. Duque knew that Aurelia hated the orcs because her brother, Rira's Windrunner, was killed by the orcs. He also knew that if anything happened to Sylvanas, his sisters would say goodbye to him, but Duque was furious. Duque retracted his 10 fingers, and the fireballs that were already close to Queen Sylvanas got even closer. Queen Sylvanas felt like she was about to pee her pants. That's right. She was only a high elf ranger, not the forsaken queen in history. She would feel pain if she got hurt, and she would die if she got hurt. Originally, rangers relied on high agility and evasion to survive, but now she was a weak little Red Riding Hood who had nothing but her quick feet. Looking at the overwhelming fireball rain that covered the sky and covered the earth, there was no gap at all. Queen Sylvanas almost suspected that Duque was trying to kill her on purpose. Not just Queen Sylvanas, but the other 2 sisters were also so nervous that their hearts were in their throats. Time seemed to have frozen. Duque's astonishing control over his spells that far surpassed that of a level magician was on full display. 36 pyroblast fireballs shrunk the moment they touched Little Red Riding Hood. They shrunk from the size of a water tank to the size of a fist, but that did not mean they were weaker. The fireballs that were as bright as the morning sun suddenly became brighter than the afternoon sun. These fireballs were like living creatures. They even dodged Little Red Riding Hood's transformation into a tall and slender elven beauty, passing through her hair bun, ears, neck, armpits, and even her crotch at high speed. In the next moment, all of them landed on the big gray wolf behind Queen Sylvanas. There was no thunderous explosion, only a series of silent impacts. It was as if someone had smashed a heavy hammer into a large, berserk werewolf's body. Sylvanas looked back and saw the 36 fireballs combine into one and fiercely hit the big bad wolf's belly. Then, they suddenly shot up and hit the big bad wolf's chin. Finally, they made a circle in midair and landed on the big bad wolf's face. The lightning-fast fireball attack was too much for the eyes to take in. If it weren't for the Rangers' dynamic vision, they wouldn't even know what was happening. They would only think that an invisible giant had punched the big bad wolf with a gorgeous combination of punches. The three Windrunner sisters watched with their mouths agape as the big bad wolf was blasted into the air, where it suffered the combined attacks of the 108 hands of magic in Duque and Garanon. Each of Ronan's arcane missiles was as big as a basin. Every time Duque unleashed his arcana technique, he could feel the air around him tremble violently. The huge attacks converged on the huge werewolf, and in less than a tenth of a second, it was swallowed up. Queen Sylvanas gritted her teeth and stared at Duque. She was about to lose her temper. "Second sister, wait," Sasha suddenly said. "Look." Aurelia reminded her second sister. Sylvanas turned her head. She was so shocked that her cloak was completely soaked in cold sweat. The thing that fell from the sky wasn't a werewolf at all. Although the iconic black bat wings had become incomparably tattered from the violent magical attacks, the sharp horns on the werewolf's head and its claws that had grown a size larger clearly told every Alliance hero that this was not a werewolf at all, but a rare high-ranked elite demon. That's right. If it wasn't for Duke's ultimate fireball bombardment, he wouldn't have been able to hit this mutated demon that was about to reveal its true intentions in the next second and attack Sylvanas, who was forced to transform by a secret technique. If it weren't for Duque, Queen Sylvanas, who had completely lost the ability to resist, would have been killed on the spot. Humph. TSK, Romeo and Juliet, who were the only two left on the stage, suddenly made a sound of disdain. Under everyone's gaze, the skin on their faces started to crack, and they no longer had the aura of the undead. It was the aura of a true great demon. Looking at the two female demons that burst out of their smaller bodies and gradually grew larger. If there were dogs nearby, Duque might really want to kill them. Plump balls, beautiful waists, amazing curvature of the buttocks, and bikini attire. Just looking at these two demons, who were rare beauties in the eyes of humans, were mysteriously sexy. Unfortunately, they had goat horns that curled from their foreheads to the back of their heads. One of them was scarlet while the other was purple. They also had the same iconic pointed tail and goat legs that curved backwards. In addition, they clearly told Duke and the others their identity. They were the demon sisters that should have appeared in the Sunwell in the future, the Eridar twins, the two lieutenants of Kill, Jaden. Almost as soon as they appeared, the pair of demon sisters gave the adventurer team a show of strength. They raised their hands and used Chaos Strike, causing Theon to lose his bearings and spin around on the spot. The other also waved her slender hand, and Gavin Rad was already bathed in flames, dancing in the flames. Rejoice! Lowly mortals, you will become the first victims of the Burning Legion's conquest of Azeroth. The purple-skinned one was Queen Sailoras. Haha! Scream in pain. Cry and howl. Then die. The red-skinned one was naturally the high-grade warlock Elisa's that Duque was more familiar with. The heroes of Azeroth didn't know who they were, but they could sense that they were extraordinary from the aura of this pair of mysterious demons. Only Duque's heart was cold. The Aradar twins and Karzak? Jaden was really generous. Perhaps this was one of the side effects of him changing history. In the days to come, there would definitely be more and more cases of people breaking in without permission. But there was no other way. This was like rowing a boat against the current. If they didn't want to experience the sorrow of helplessness and despair again and again, they had to be prepared every time. Since Azeroth didn't have the advanced technology and didn't have the power to travel countless light years to kill the burning legion that was hiding in some unknown corner, they could only obediently wait for the arrival of the true dawn. It wasn't Duque's personality to let others do whatever they wanted. Duque sneered and snapped his fingers. Demon, don't think too highly of yourself in my territory. Almost at the same time, a bright golden light suddenly descended from the void and blasted into the head of Karzak, who was about to climb into the opera house. The huge figure of the Saintess of Chastity appeared at the entrance of the opera house. At the same time, the wooden boards above the stage exploded, and a huge magically constructed giant fell with a loud bang. Curator, enter. Chapter 655. At that moment, every hero felt a sense of comfort. After all, this was still half Duque's home ground. The traces of the demons being torn apart and the lightning roasted on the first floor gave everyone a more objective understanding of Duque's huge arcane puppet, Curator. This was especially so when the Curator smashed the ceiling of the stage like a god of thunder descending from the heavens. While in midair, he displayed an agility that was different from the other puppets. 2 large electric balls blasted in front of the Aradar twins. Even the calmer Tyrion Fordring shouted, "Nice." Humph. The Aradar twins suffered a small loss. They grunted and took half a step back. Bang, another loud sound. The Curator stood firmly between the twins and the adventure team. Oh, there was still Muradin. This guy was too small. He was standing in the gap between the Curator's legs and was completely fine. Muradin turned his head and glared at Duque fiercely. Hey! Duque! What's the meaning of this? Duque ignored Muradin. What he saw in the system notification was something more important. System notification: your commander-level mechanical construct has attacked the Aradar Gemini's high-grade warlock Elisa's projection, causing damage. Duque did not look at the latter part of the notification, but that was enough. If it was the Aradar twins at their peak, even if Kazak did not appear, Duque would probably wet his pants in fear. But as for the projection, that meant that the Aradar twins were not here at all. Duque did not know how much combat power the projected avatar had. He estimated that it would at most have 30 to 40%. This was why the Curator's lightning ball could force the twins to retreat. Just like how one could not use a ladle of water to penetrate a steel shield. Low-level mysteries were destined to be unable to shake high-level mysteries. This was the iron-like rule of the world of Azeroth. Since the Curator's attack was effective. Hee. Looking at the confident smile on Duque's face, the Aradar twins actually laughed together. Not bad. You insignificant human being, Aless spoke first. You actually saw through our true strength in one go, Queen Sailoras said. Humph. Kil'jaeden had asked his adjutant to send 2 avatars just to conquer Karazhan, the bridgehead of the human defense line. Don't you think you're underestimating our alliance? Duque was both demonstrating and encouraging his teammates. What? Just the incarnation of Kil'jaeden's adjutant? Every hero shivered. No, it was more like they had been injected with a dose of chicken blood. It took courage to fight against a powerful enemy, and it took even more courage to launch a suicidal charge despite knowing that death was inevitable. Not everyone was called Wuther the Light Envoy. Compared to fighting to the death with the demons, everyone preferred this kind of counterattack. For the Alliance. Charge. Muradin was the first to rush forward. He was immediately kicked away by Queen Sailoras. Although Kil'jaeden were in human form, they were as tall as 2 people. The kick was definitely painful. Muradin flew out with his heavy armor like a fly ball hit by a baseball bat. At this time, Muradin's qualities as a top warrior hero were fully revealed. Even when he had nowhere to borrow strength from in the air, Muradin still had the time to activate the warrior's special skill, Intercept. Using up a stream of fury, which was the source of the warrior's strength, Muradin, the dwarf, suddenly kicked with his short legs in the air, causing the air under his feet to explode. He turned into a stream of light and rushed towards Queen Sayloras again. Not only did he use Intercept, but Muradin also grew larger at high speed in the air. When he was about to hit Queen Sayloras, he had become a short, fat giant with a height of more than 2.5 meters and a body width of nearly 4 meters. His entire body was covered in a metallic silver color. The dwarf's godly skill, Avatar. Lifting his leg that was thicker than an elephant's leg, Muradin, who was flying back at high speed, kicked Queen Sayloras in the face. The huge silver foot left a black footprint the size of a basin on the queen's beautiful face. Ah! With the queen's scream, the proud demoness was kicked away. Next to her, the curator also slapped the high-grade warlock Elisa's. The curator's explosive attack, which could use the power of lightning to accelerate for a short period of time, also made Elisa's uncomfortable. The queen was only sent flying for about 3 meters, but the demon warlock was sent flying for nearly 10 meters. Huh! Duque instinctively felt that something was wrong. Because he saw Elisa's, who had been sent flying into the area belonging to the back door of Karazhan, take out a brazier, raise her hand, and ignite a handful of dust-like things. Not good. Curator, stop him. Under the synchronized control of the system elf, the curator showed his greatest agility. Unfortunately, he was still a step too late. Elisa's had a sarcastic expression on her face. At this time, she actually still had the mood to recite Romeo's lines. Are you trying to provoke me? Then come on. Right. For these arrogant and intelligent demons, every resistance from insignificant humans was a challenge to their supreme status. If it weren't for the spatial barrier that the Titans of creation had set up for Azeroth, the Burning Legion would have easily conquered this world through the portal. With the casting of this high-grade demon warlock, everyone in the adventure team could clearly feel that an ancient creature was awakened in the distance. Useless bug, let me show you my power. The iconic line made Duque's face sink even more. This guy was Karazhan's boss, Nightmare of the Night. Just as the curator controlled by the system elf reached Elisa's, a huge bone dragon that was bigger than the curator and covered in dark flames suddenly broke through the thick wall and charged in from outside Karazhan. The two behemoths collided into each other without any fancy moves. Their wild battle quickly turned the backdoor area, which had already collapsed a lot, into ruins in the truest sense. On this side, Queen Sayloras was at a disadvantage. Muradin in front of her was a damn rogue. After activating Avatar, not only did all his attributes skyrocket, but he also didn't suffer from negative statuses such as confusion and dizziness. His resistance to almost all elements was so high that it was outrageous, except for one attribute, Holy. Muradin was not invincible. He would still hurt and bleed when he was injured. But there were still 3 guys who believed in holy light behind him who were doing their best to heal him. Seeing that they couldn't stop Queen Sayloras, the 2 paladins also temporarily became healers, injecting holy light into the big dwarf as if it was free. Queen Sayloras was enraged and suddenly shouted, "Come out, Nethervoid dragon." A new portal suddenly opened in front of the Saintess of Chastity, who was about to rush to Kazak's portal, and an illusory blue dragon appeared. Chapter 656. The huge horn and the 3 mysterious rays that shot out from the void constantly strengthened the strength of the giant dragon. Alright, another boss of Karazhan, the Nether Dragon. At this time, Duque really wanted to eat someone up. While he was busy fighting the orcs, the Eridar twins had secretly controlled almost all the bosses in Karazhan. If not for the Einarjar and Khadgar's reliability, and the fact that the curator was an arcane construct that was difficult to control with dark power, perhaps when Duque returned, there would already be a huge pit waiting for him. Evil must be purified. The Saintess of Chastity angrily raised her hand and a golden beam of light blasted towards the portal. However, she inadvertently blocked a red ray that came from the void. Half of the nether dragon's body was stuck at the entrance of the opera house. It waved its claws and began to wrestle with the Saintess of Chastity. At this time, everyone on the Alliance's side realized that something was wrong. Aurelia was a little anxious. Duque. If you still have any tricks up your sleeves, use them quickly. The guy who barged in gave me a bad feeling. Inside the opera house, the thick dark aura was enough to easily suffocate any ordinary person to death. The surging mysterious power tore all the debris in the opera house into pieces. If the opera house itself was not a part of Karazhan and was fixed by the strange subspace, just Kazak's intrusion alone would have been enough to throw the entire building into the sky like a toy, and then it would explode and fall apart. Duque's face was livid. Ha ha ha. I'm coming, mortal. Look up to the powerful burning legion. Kazak's wild laughter rang through the entire opera house. First, a huge red claw with 3 fingers stretched out of the portal. This demon's claw was so huge that it could be used as an anchor for a battleship. Then, a pair of sharp red bat wings and a square-headed broadsword that looked like a door panel extended out. Finally, there was the iconic horned head and the ferocious face of the demon. However, perhaps because of the venue, Kazak could not completely enter this space. The Kazak that appeared in front of everyone only reached his waist. Even so, that terrifying evil aura had already spread out in all directions like a shockwave. The Windwalker sisters, Edwin, and the others, whose bodies were relatively light, almost subconsciously wanted to move away from Karzak as far as possible. Ha ha ha. Puny humans, do you still want to resist the mighty burning legion? Kazak looked around and wantonly mocked Duque and the others. Duque? Servanas was also anxious. You have a way, don't you? Sasha's eyes were filled with confidence. The other heroes did not speak, but their thoughts were the same. Behind Muradin, the 3 rangers, Garanon and Edwin continued to attack with all their might. Edwin Van Cleef transformed into a flickering phantom, his ethereal figure flashing past the Queen's side. Every time he appeared, he would inflict bleeding damage on the Queen's demonic leg. But as they did their job, everyone placed their hopes on Duque. That's right, they were all very strong. If it was an ordinary enemy, no matter how many or how strong they were, they would not retreat at all. Unfortunately, this was far beyond the limits of what mortal power could handle. When they could not handle things themselves, they could only pray for a miracle. Duque was synonymous with miracles. Did Duque run out of tricks? More or less. Racking his brain, Duque could not think of a good way to deal with Kazak. The others might not know, but Duque knew that Kazak was a very meticulous enemy. If this bastard was not killed in 3 minutes, Kazak would enter a berserk state. That was a terrifying state where his attack power and life force would double and double. Anyone would have to kneel before it. Duque could run away with his corpse, but Aurelia and the others would all die. If they could gather the strength of 10 people and gang up on Kazak, they might have a chance of survival. With the projection of the Eridar twins still around, there was no chance of survival at all. Duque pulled out a red scale at lightning speed and shouted at it. Help! I'm going to die. Alexstrasza, get over here and help me deal with that big demon, or you'll have to help me collect my corpse. Well, actually, those were purely Duque's thoughts. As the deputy commander of the Alliance, the hero of the Alliance, and the new temporary guardian, would Duque do something so uncool? Of course not. The actor Duque had Theon carry the high-grade warlock auras, who was charging over again, while his hands continued to attack Queen Sailoras. He only used a small amount of time to say to the scale, the commander of the Burning Legion, Kill, Jaden, has sent Kazak and his 2 deputies to attack Karazhan. The acting guardian, Duke Marcus, will fight until the last moment. If possible, please send reinforcements as soon as possible. Ever since the Eridar twins helped Kazak forcibly open the spatial barrier of Karazhan, the surrounding space had become unstable, and magic communication had lost its effect. As for how effective this scale was, Duque was not sure. Do your best and leave it to fate. This was Duque's attitude. The acting guardian's authority was only to call an ancient red dragon of the Red Dragon Army. Duque was very clear that one ancient red dragon was definitely not enough. At the very least, 2 of the ambassadors from the Sleeping Dragon Temple had to take action. Otherwise, it would be impossible to defeat Kazakh in 3 minutes. Duque had thought of a miracle, but he did not expect a miracle to appear in such a strange form. A small window suddenly popped up, occupying a large part of the upper left corner of Duque's retina. Congratulations, host. Because of the connection between the Guardian and the Sleeping Dragon Temple, you have now officially activated Debt Collector Beats People mode. Before Duque could react, the system elf read the information on the surface of his brain and filled it in this pop-up window. Target, Burning Legion's high-grade commander, Kazakh. Combat power evaluation, skeleton level. Initial estimation of skills, cleave, thunderstrike, group shadow arrow, soul capture, and so on. Request for combat power support automatically set to Elite Ancient Dragon or above. According to combat power requirements, automatically ignore Quick Hit and Downwind Hit modes and activate Specialized Hit mode. Your request has been sent. Please wait for the old driver of the dragon race to accept the order. Beep, 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 the route is busy. You can choose to add a tip so that the powerful dragon race will be more interested in your order. Duke almost spat out a mouthful of blood when he saw this. You still want a tip? This is saving the world. You're actually asking me for a tip? Duque rolled his eyes. With a thought, he wrote Häagen-Dazs ice cream in the tip column. A miracle happened. The female driver of the dragon race, Legolas, has accepted your order. Please protect yourself, she will arrive at any time. Chapter 657. Huh? Dragon Tribe Driver Legolas? Who is that? Why does it sound so familiar? Duque's first reaction was to be dumbfounded. His second reaction was F***CK. Kazakh's shadow arrow rain that covered his entire field of vision was coming. It was not a good feeling. It was as if he was tied to a cross and could not move at all, while the other party tossed a black, poisonous sea urchin at his face. The sound of death that rang in his ears made his scalp go numb. Hide behind me. Muradin attempted to use his massive body to block in front of him, creating a path of survival for the adventurer team. However, his actions were stopped by the Eridar twins at the same time, and he was forcefully held back. At the critical moment, a teleportation gate suddenly opened beside Duque. An extremely healthy and fair thigh appeared in front of Duque. Unlike the slender thighs of the Windrunner sisters, this thigh was thicker than an elf's due to the protruding buttocks at the base of this thigh. This did not mean that this thigh was ugly. Instead, starting from the thigh, the entire thigh began to become streamlined. This was a very mature and beautiful thigh. Duque recognized this thigh. Ugh, in the next moment, what appeared in Duque's vision was a muscular arm with biceps clearly visible. Even though it was as fair as Aurelia's, it was even more muscular and beautiful than the Windrunner sisters' arms. It was not the kind of muscles that bulged exaggeratedly, but it had the beauty of a bodybuilder. It was just this one hand that was raised lightly. A translucent illusory red dragon wing replaced the rising red curtain, firmly blocking the entire stage. Phew. 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 Even the raindrops falling on the pond did not count. The storm-like shadow arrow rain did not even cause a ripple on the illusory dragon wing. It was a collision that was even more exaggerated than an egg hitting a rock. The seemingly domineering shadow arrow rain shattered upon colliding with the illusory dragon wing. In the blink of an eye, all of them disappeared without a trace. That's right. Low-tier mysteries were meaningless in front of high-level mysteries. Kazakh's outstretched demon claw froze in mid-air, completely forgetting to retract it. On the ugly face of the demon, a pair of scarlet eyes bulged out, filled with disbelief. Kazak could faintly feel a terrifying power that completely surpassed him from that petite and almost negligible body. This woman who suddenly appeared. Who was she? On the other side, the Eridar twins panicked and leaped back 3 times in a row. They widened the distance between them and Muradin. No, more accurately, they widened the distance between them and the red-haired woman who just came out. The heroes of the adventure team also looked at the great god who had suddenly appeared in shock. Yo! I'm coming. The bright red-haired woman greeted Duque, making people feel that there was a huge, erect dog tail wagging behind her butt. Her face was full of "praise me. Hurry up and praise me" expression. Duque gulped. Oh, Alexstrasza, why are you here? I remember that my temporary guardian authority can only reach up to the ancient dragons at most. Isn't the Red Dragon Army the most particular about rules? Yes. But if the demon invading Azeroth is too strong, wouldn't it be natural to send in the dragon aspect? Alexstrasza lied through her teeth. Normally, unless the Burning Legion's Big Three came personally, it would not be her turn to act according to the rules. Moreover, didn't you pay an extra price? I heard that mages are very particular about equivalent exchange. Actually, the Red Dragon Army is similar. Huh? Extra price. At this moment, Duque was a little confused. Hey, that DOS ice cream, remember to give it to me later. You must remember it. The queen's golden eyes clearly showed a strange determination. Pfft. Duque could not help but spit. Oh. Your Majesty the Queen. Didn't you notice that you revealed your true nature as a foodie? At this time, just smile. Haha. Ha ha ha. Damn, using an ice cream to exchange for the Red Dragon Queen's help, what the hell? Even though the price Duque was about to pay was probably equivalent to a few dozen RMB before he transmigrated, the Queen did not hesitate at all. Ha! A soft, thunderous roar came from the flaming red lips. It was a sharp howl mixed with the power of a dragon. The deafening sound that should have pierced the eardrums of the mortals nearby was completely restrained by the Red Dragon Queen's extraordinary control. It was like a venomous snake's tongue, striking out like lightning. In the ears of the bystanders, it was just a slightly loud shout. But in that instant, the Eridar twins' incarnations were completely disintegrated into spiritual particles by the sound wave and dissipated in the wind. Unexpectedly, Romeo and Juliet, who were supposed to be bosses, did not disappear on the spot. Instead, they broke free from their possession and shouted their last lines. Romeo shouted, "You killed me, and you're so proud." Juliet said, "Ah. Good knife, this is your scabbard. Stab it and let me die." In the end, the two fell. Dead. Duque was speechless. Spectators from 2 to 9 were speechless. On the other side, Kazak felt that something was wrong. Even at his peak, he might not be able to withstand Alexstrasza's attack. Furthermore, he only came with half of his body. Because of the spatial barrier, he only had half of his strength. The Eridar twins were just projections. Their deaths were not to be regretted. Even if they were killed by the Queen's sound wave, they would at most lose a few % of their souls. He, Kazak, had come in person. At this moment, Kazak wanted to cry himself to death in the toilet. Ah! As he shouted, Kazak made his last struggle. The sword in his hand that was more than 10 meters long drew a cold arc in the air. He used all his strength to slash at the Red Dragon Queen in the middle of the stage. Humph. Disdain flowed out of her golden eyes. She walked forward casually, feeling completely defenseless. Her steps were so light that it seemed like she was going for a picnic. It was not like a warrior's footsteps at all. Kazak almost couldn't help but laugh. For the first time, he saw the light of victory. Yes, dragons were indeed powerful creatures. Their bodies were also top-notch. The Red Dragon Queen's almost limitless healing ability was also very overpowered. But, so what? Kazakh laughed maniacally in his mind. Fool. How much strength can you use in your human form? I, Kazakh, will be taking the head of the life-giver Alexstrasza. Kazakh left this sentence in his mind and attacked with all his might. The sword, which was already faster than a mortal's dynamic vision, actually burst out with a short but powerful aura and exploded with a second acceleration. The sword cut through the void and slashed at the queen's neck. At this moment, Alexstrasza suddenly said, "My ice cream." Chapter 658. Ice cream? What's that? Has the famous Red Dragon Queen gone mad? Kazakh's face showed a hint of mockery. Demons were very realistic and would not be soft-hearted just because the other party revealed a flaw. No one expected that the speed that was already at the peak of the peak could be accelerated a third time. If one had to describe the speed before this move, it would be lightning. When one saw the light, one's head would already be struck by lightning. However, after 3 times of acceleration, one's perception was almost in the realm of spatial folding. This attack speed, even Duque, who had absolute confidence in the Red Dragon Queen, could not help but be shaken at this moment. Be it demons or dragons, they were all races with outstanding talent. Success was 99% sweat and 1% genius. In fact, there were many beings who were willing to give up the 99%, but most of them lacked the 1%. Those who had the 1% were already envied and hated by others. Yet, this fellow was willing to put in 10 times the effort of a mortal. Kazakh's sword was just that fast. Whether it was the angle, the strength of the force, or the perfection of the demonic power, everything was impeccable. This was no longer a simple talent. Without millions of practice, it was impossible to have the power to step into the realm of the extraordinary. Haha. I'm going to kill Alexstrasza. Kazakh was very sure. Unfortunately, what happened next made this great demon, who had experienced countless battles, dumbfounded. If Alexstrasza used the advantage of her petite body to dodge at the last moment, causing the sharp slash of the beheader's sword to miss. If that was the case, perhaps he could admit that he had underestimated the agility of the dragon aspect in human form. But, the Red Dragon Queen only raised 2 fingers. Yes. She used the tips of the slightly sharpened scarlet nails on her index and middle fingers to easily catch Kazakh's terrifying attack that seemed to transcend space. Just by looking, it was obvious that this terrifying giant sword was more than 10 meters long and weighed in the unit of tons. However, the queen seemed to be picking up a fallen flower petal, so gentle and satisfied. Kazakh's huge body, which was several stories tall, and the queen's standard human body, staged the greatest irony on the stage of this Karlahim theater. It felt as if the air, no, the entire space-time had been completely frozen by this attack. Kazakh wasn't the only one who was desperately trying to inhale air into his lungs. Duque and the others were doing the same. How is this possible? It was very interesting. Both sides let out the same cry of surprise. Soon after, the team of adventurers started to pant so low that it was almost inaudible. At this time, the Red Dragon Queen emphasized, "I want it today." What do you want? Even Duque, as the person involved, took a full 3 seconds to realize that this was connected to the previous, "my ice cream." This foodie actually said, "I want the ice cream today." Duque pointed at Kazakh in annoyance. "The faster you get rid of this guy, the more time I have to get your ice cream." Even though Duque was clearly talking and laughing with the queen, Kazakh was deeply afraid of the unparalleled sense of control that Duque and the queen exuded during their conversation. The queen's eyes moved, and the aura that burst forth from her gaze seemed to make this big demon feel as if the sky and earth were collapsing. Yes. Whether it was the sky or the earth, it was all on his side that was collapsing. The surrounding temperature suddenly rose by more than 20 degrees. Even the air was buzzing, as if some invisible, mysterious power was rippling through the entire theater. The next moment, Kacha. A crack suddenly appeared on the portal around Kazakh's waist. Immediately, an illusory dragon head appeared right above Kazak's body. The vanguard and commander of the Burning Legion could only watch in despair as the translucent dragon head suddenly spat out a terrifying dragon's breath of over 10,000 degrees. Asterisk whoosh. Asterisk the dragon's breath that could burn everything turned into a huge pillar of fire and poured down on Kazak's head. There were no splashes of flames, and there was no magma. Under the extraordinary control, every drop of dragon's breath that tried to leave the range of the fire pillar was pulled back and continued to burn the body of this big demon. On the huge body that was several stories high, the hard skin of the demon was quickly decomposed by the high temperature. The strong muscles rapidly withered, and the strong bones were charred black at a speed visible to the naked eye. In less than 5 seconds, this big demon that could turn the whole of Karazhan upside down, was dead. Huh. Alexstrasza suddenly frowned. What? Damn, most of this guy's soul did not pass through the portal. He escaped. The queen spat angrily. Duque did not care too much. That's right. Demons are all like this. They seem very fierce. In reality, they are more afraid of death than anyone else. Duque's conclusion caused the people around him to burst into laughter. The queen raised her hand, and a huge translucent dragon claw appeared in midair. It grabbed Kazak's remains and pulled the entire demon corpse out of the portal for her. After Kazak's huge body went through the baptism of incineration, all that was left were useless ashes and a pile of Kazak's treasures. Duque, do you want it? The queen did not care about these things, so naturally, Duque took advantage of it. Yes. Why not? It's only fair to kill the enemy and take the spoils of war. Defeating the boss without looting the corpse. That was a crime in every sense of the word. I'm committing a crime. Even though Duque was recognized as a black hand in the game in his previous life, he would not give up on looting the corpse. As for the black hand, one had to have the ability to defeat the boss to be qualified to be a black hand. If you don't let me lead the group, you won't even have the chance to see the black hand looting the corpse. Humph humph humph. The evil Duque firmly defended his black hand actions in the game. An icicle spell swept up a small tornado and cooled down the high-temperature ashes at the same time. The excited Duque quickly used the magician's hand to take out a staff with a head that looked like a small drum and 4 strange feathers. Duque tossed it to Ronan. Amber seal, perfect for you. Thank you, teacher. Ronan accepted it happily. Duke gave a one-handed hammer called Skybreaker to Muradin and the 2 holy knights to discuss how to split it. He then gave the cloak, Escadar's fur, to the Windrunner's sisters, and finally gave a pair of gloves called Leather of Bad Luck to Edwin. Finally, he found what he wanted the most, Shadow Eye. Chapter 659. Although the shadowy eye was theoretically something that Kazak would drop, theory was theory. Even his Karazhan had been ambushed by a demon. Perhaps Kazak's transport captain was so stupid that he didn't bring it with him? Seeing how Duque was so interested in this palm-sized, darkness-shrouded, and seemingly moving eyeball, if Duque wasn't a hero of the Alliance, standing at the forefront of the fight against evil, anyone would think that Duque was a sorcerer who had fallen into evil ways. Aurelia wanted to say something but stopped. For the sake of Duque's image, she didn't choose to ask on the spot. She even secretly pulled her 2 curious sisters aside. But while she could hold back, guys like Muradin couldn't. He opened his big mouth and said, "Hey. Duque, what do you want this thing for? I don't think it's good. Do you want a paladin to hammer it?" Gavin Rad was curious. He was sure that Duque must have an explanation. But Tyrion stepped forward without hesitation. Duque smiled. The shadowy eye is certainly not a good thing, but I want to remind everyone that in the future, there will be another thing called the Holy Eye appearing in this world. When they were combined, there would be a chance to obtain a blessing staff. This would be a great and noble staff. If you don't trust me, I can temporarily seal this shadowy eye in the Holy Light Church in Stormwind. The holy light will not betray your trust, Your Excellency. Benedetta smiled and nodded. When everyone heard this, they immediately felt relieved. Intentionally or unintentionally, Duque glanced past the Bishop of Stormwind, Benedetta's. The blessing staff, the most sacred thing in a priest's heart. Even as the years passed and people changed, many priests still placed such a special epic staff in the corner of their warehouse. It was the best wish and memory of a generation of priests. But Duque knew Benedetta's background. The blessing staff was a sacred treasure, and Duque would not give it to this guy. On the other side, the battle between the two bosses continued. Duque had everyone help the Virgin Mary deal with the Void Nether Dragon, but he and the Red Dragon Queen didn't move. Duque, you're not going? Everyone was a little puzzled. Duque's smile gave people a sense of absolute confidence. I won't be going. If I or Her Majesty Alexstrasza takes action, it will be over in an instant. In the future, everyone might have to face all kinds of powerful enemies with strange abilities. This is a rare opportunity to train. Everyone, please use your wisdom and courage to deal with this Nether Void Dragon. Ah. Yes, please replace Ms. Christine first. With her help, it's meaningless. What was being pretentious? This was what it meant to be cool. There was nothing more to say about the boss's demeanor of not needing him to do anything for such a small matter. It didn't feel like Duque was a young man at all. Instead, it felt like he was on the same level as the Red Dragon Queen. As the guardian of Azeroth, he had protected this world for thousands of years. He was the kind of powerful existence that could suppress all gods and demons with a wave of his hand. Okay, he was cool for 3 seconds. When Aurelia asked, Duque, what are you going to do now? Duque had a strange expression. I need to discuss the importance of morale with Her Majesty. Everyone suddenly remembered the ice cream that the Queen had been emphasizing. Damn, it was all to get food to please the Queen. Everyone was speechless. There was nothing they could do. Who told Duque to be the boss? Everyone understood the significance of the Karazhan spatial node in protecting the world of Azeroth. That big demon called Kazak was not someone they could deal with. If they couldn't deal with the big demon, they could deal with the small ones. These world-famous heroes of the later generations were now hired by Dukla to work for him. The Queen put her hands on her hips and waited for everyone to leave the stage. Almost as soon as everyone left, the Queen's face changed. A foodie's face. The Queen almost turned into a husky wagging her tail. Hey, Duque, is that Häagen-Dazs ice cream delicious? I only realized that the dragon's cooking skills are terrible when I became a human a while ago. Ah, humans and high elves are magical races that really know how to enjoy themselves. Duque was speechless. The Queen shook Duque's arm, almost shaking Duque's small body. Forget about those idiots who only know how to eat their prey raw for tens of thousands of years. Even that kid Cleistras is not kind. He clearly tasted a lot of delicious food in the Dalajan, but he refused to give it to me even once. Cleistras was Krasis, right? Hey. Legend has it that Krasis is secretly in love with you. Just because I don't give you delicious food, you erase his love for you. Krasis, did I do something to make you despair? Duque's heart was trembling. It seemed that he had broken up another historical couple. Why did he use the word again? Well, anyway, Duque was from the Lovers Go to Die group. Even if he was now a traitor to the Singles Alliance, Duque decided not to care about it. Unexpectedly, the Queen kept on chattering. When I was Legolas, I heard a piece of news. The best seasoning in the whole of Lordaeron comes from you. I didn't expect you to be a gourmet supplier. Yes. If I could travel back in time, I would definitely write a book called The Gourmet Supplier and dominate the Dian Yang website in 2016. What a joke. Only Duque himself knew that it was not that his cooking skills were good enough, but that the food and seasoning methods in this world were too lousy. Even the white bread that was considered superior by the world was worlds apart from the bread that was fermented with yeast, bulking agents, and additives before Duque traveled through time. Because of transportation, salt was not available in many places. There was no butter, no peanut butter, and they had to eat dry, tasteless bread every day. Duke was too lazy to complain about all kinds of terrible things. At that moment, Duque became the master of China. At that moment, Duque became the god of cooking in the spirit of the halberd eaters. The best actor Duke looked at the queen with a sacred aura and said solemnly, "True delicacies of the world need time, love, and creativity to polish them. Things made in haste will never be perfect. Alexstrasza, do you trust me?" The queen quickly nodded like a chick pecking at rice. "Give me 3 days. I will make Häagen-Dazs ice cream that will satisfy you." Duque mourned in his heart. "Sorry. Häagen-Dazs, Duque, may ruin your brand." Chapter 660. Logically speaking, there was a reason for everything's success. So big that humans dominated the earth. So small that the success of Häagen-Dazs ice cream. Although Duque always felt that Häagen-Dazs was too sweet, many people in his previous world would easily think of it when they thought of the best ice cream. Of course, it was impossible for a half-transmigrator like Duque to make an identical ice cream under the Häagen-Dazs brand. Duque's biggest advantage was that no one in Azeroth had ever eaten an authentic Häagen-Dazs. If this wasn't a war-torn world, Duque was absolutely sure that he could become the richest person in this world with just his transmigrator knowledge. Don't ask why Duque knew how to make ice cream. Forget that there were no female creatures in the temple of the University of Technology. There was only one small shop within 3 kilometers of the university. Not only did they sell pineapple beer, they even dared to refreeze the melted ice cream after the power was cut off. In a fit of anger, Duque and the other animals didn't have ice cream to make themselves. So they remembered it. Don't ask why they ate ice cream in the middle of winter. Didn't they see that the person who was drooling over it was actually a super female dragon? Her stomach was full of stomach fire. Dragon breath. How could it not be hot? That wasn't a problem at all. And the insidious Duque, in order to maximize the effect of nothing, had specially carried out a contrast battle. So, while the 9 heroes of the Alliance fought to the death downstairs, Duque and Alexstrasza slipped to the rooftop of Karazhan to make food. After a few teleportations, Duque got what he wanted. After Prince Malchezer knelt, the rooftop of Karazhan was empty. The queen sat cross-legged on the fence, looking left and right, smelling the increasingly rich fragrance in the air. She was so moved that she was about to cry. On the left was a whole roast cow. The red dragon had eaten roast beef quite a bit. Duque's method was more authentic. After removing the internal organs and peeling off the skin, Duque used hands of magic to fix the cow's body on a special iron frame and then put various spices into the cow's body. Well, ever since he made mustard, Duque had invested at least 100,000 gold coins in seasoning. He didn't have cumin anymore, but he still found a lot of similar things. He spread the seasoning paste evenly over the cow's body and used only a dozen hands of magic to carry the iron frame to a special pit for roasting the cow. The pit that was specially made for roasting the whole cow looked like a tin can. It was built with bricks and was about 4 meters long, 2 meters wide, and 2 meters deep. The cow was placed in the pit, and at the bottom of the pit was a blazing charcoal fire. As long as the beef was roasted over a charcoal fire for a few hours, the color of the beef would slowly turn golden. The golden color signified a bountiful harvest, which meant that the whole beef was cooked. Duke had asked Alexstrasza if she could wait. The queen said, "It's fine. I have plenty of time." For a dragon that had lived for more than 20,000 years, what she lacked most wasn't time, but new things. Duque suddenly realized that the gadgets he brought from Earth that couldn't be found in this world could be very attractive to these guys who had almost infinite lives. Fine. The food supplier, Duque, went back to work. Since it was fake Häagen-Dazs ice cream, simple ice cream couldn't satisfy the queen, or to be more precise, Duque's appetite. What Duque was going to make was red bean ice cream. He asked the system elf to pick out the impurities in the red beans with hands of magic and rinse the pebbles. Soak the red beans in cold water for 1 hour, add water, and cook the red beans using the method of boiling the water 3 times and braising 3 times, boil the water 3 times, then turn off the heat and simmer for half an hour, repeat 3 times. At the same time, he broke the eggs into a small basin. He couldn't find a beater in a hurry, but it wasn't a problem for Duque. He simply rotated the hands of magic in the basin at a high speed. When the color became slightly lighter, it was a success. While beating the eggs, Duque slowly added milk and sugar and stirred. Duke and Alexstrasza slowly heated it up with a low flame, chatting about trivial matters as they heated and stirred the semi-finished products. When the pot was boiling, Duque added corn flour. Unfortunately, there was no cornstarch in this world. Duque really didn't know how to make it, so he could only replace it with ground corn flour. However, it wouldn't be a problem to fool people, no, dragons. He added the corn flour and stirred it until it was uniform. He heated it again. This time, it was more viscous. He heated it slowly with a low fire and put it into a container. Usually, what followed was a long cool down. Normally, it would take about 4 to 5 hours to freeze. Unfortunately, when Duque saw this dragon queen, who was obviously a glutton, gulping down her saliva every minute, Duque resigned himself to his fate and used magic to improve it. The great radiant moon mage Duque used his unparalleled control of magic to speed up the cooling of the ice cream as much as possible without damaging its quality. It was the same with the roast beef. About half an hour later, when the roast beef and the ice cream were almost done at the same time, Muradin and the other 8 arrived on the roof under Khadgar's lead. Yo! Duque! Those 2 monsters aren't bad. We've learned something new. Muradin's loud voice reached them before he even reached the roof. Oh, my rock ancestor. What is this fragrance? Then, everyone heard a sweet female voice. Hey, Duque, give it to me, can you give it to me? I beg you, hurry up and give it to me, I can't take it anymore. Any man who heard that sorrowful voice would feel their bones go numb. If it had been anywhere else, Aurelia might have been annoyed. Unfortunately, after smelling that rich fragrance, the Windrunner sisters had fallen. The group of fellows charged forward at the speed of a charge. No, that bastard Muradin used the warrior's charge skill. Mine. Mine. It's all mine. What did dwarves love the most? Delicious food and good wine. Not just that bastard Muradin, even the other heroes who had experienced a tough battle were tempted by the situation before them. Although no one was injured, they had expended a lot of stamina and energy. What could be more surprising than a delicious roast beef and mysterious ice cream after a victory? The group first pounced on the golden roast beef. Then, when they realized that the great red dragon queen was eating the roast beef without a care in the world, she scooped up a spoonful of ice cream. Everyone's expression changed. That's right, roast meat with ice cream was a bit ridiculous, but these country bumpkins in the food desert of Azeroth had never seen it before. Chapter 661. Soldiers who had been on the battlefield knew the value of good food. The hardship of marching was not something that outsiders could understand. Walking in dense forests, if they had enough energy, they could shoot some prey and have a sumptuous meal. When marching to places like the Burning Plains or the Cursed Lands, the experience was enough to make people want to die. It was not that there was no prey, but would anyone dare to eat those monsters that had been corroded by dark energy? Moreover, roasted meat could not possibly be as delicious as Duque's whole roasted cow. What else was there to care about in war? It was already good enough to stay alive. Did they not see that even the crown prince of Kurtalas had died? Other than the Dalajan's pharaoh who could not sleep well, eat well, and would not work if their babies were not happy, the entire alliance, from soldiers to generals, did not care so much. But this did not mean that they had no need for good food. Kings and nobles would carry spices in private. Yes, it was something from Duque's side. At the height of the war, the alliance had a saying about the golden plant. It meant that Duque's spices were more expensive than gold. Of course, it was not because Duque was so expensive, it was because of the unscrupulous merchants. The big shots of the alliance naturally had Duque's supplies, but the nobles below were not so lucky. This was where Duque was smart. Others profited from war and were criticized by everyone, but when Duque made a fortune, no one could complain. Because in terms of armaments, Duque was absolutely selfless and did not skimp. But food and spices were not necessities, right? They were luxury goods, right? Yes, those unscrupulous merchants mentioned above were all secretly Duque's people. You could choose not to buy, no one would force you to buy. It was just that other people ate well and drank spicy food, while you could only eat tasteless white bread. Don't blame other nobles for looking down on you. Faced with spices that were inflated by unscrupulous merchants, good nobles would cry and dig into their wallets. After fighting a big war against the beast men, the nobles' wallets had shrunk, except for Duque. As for how much money Duque had, he did not know. After 10 million, Duque stopped counting. Alright, I'll set a small goal. Before Zol arrives, I'll earn 100 million from him first. At this time, because Karazhan had isolated part of the space, there was no cold wind blowing in, so it became a very pleasant thing. The group of heroes ate barbecued meat, drank wine, and looked at the beauties eating ice cream in the middle of the ice and snow. Actually, Duque's ice cream wasn't that amazing. According to his standards, it was about 60% of the original version. The fragrance of the milk was enough, and the taste of the red beans was also not bad. The white sugar added was not refined enough, but it was still passable. The biggest difference was the smoothness of the ice cream. The enjoyment of top-notch ice cream wasn't something that Duque's imitation could compare to. However, the ladies didn't know. They only knew that the snow that they had seen a lot of could also become a delicacy after being condensed. One by one, the top beauties in Azeroth stretched out their soft lilac tongues and licked the ice cream without being taught. The scene was really pleasing to the eye. Accompanied by the white, half-melted ice cream, the seductive little tongue faintly swam between their bright red lips. Because even Alexstrasza's human form was based on the template of the High Elves, everyone saw the 4 elven beauties squinting their long and charming phoenix eyes, stretching their eyebrows that were longer than humans, and enjoying the delicacy. If they didn't know that this had nothing to do with flirting, anyone would mistake it for some kind of temptation or invitation. The men weren't too interested in ice cream. They recognized it as a delicacy, but they were more interested in the roast beef. Muradin and the 2 paladins were eating meat and drinking wine, while Benedettas chatted with Theon from time to time. Edwin and Ronan were both Duque's subordinates, and the 2 tactfully went to the side to chat. Only Duque, the 3 Windrunner sisters, and the Red Dragon Queen were left together. Duque didn't have that many scruples. One was the golden thigh of the dragons that he had to maintain a good relationship with, 2 were his own women, and Servanas, who was both his sister-in-law and sister-in-law. Duque didn't mind. Unlike the foodie Alexstrasza, Aurelia seemed to be a bit upset that Duque didn't bring out such delicious food earlier. When it came to food, Aurelia gave in to the queen, but her words made the queen choke. It's fine, Your Majesty, eat more. I'm by Duque's side anyway. When we sisters want it, Duque can make it for us. The queen's eyes were plaintive. Sasha, on the other hand, didn't pay any attention. Seeing Duque looking at her, Sasha returned a slightly seductive look. She glanced at Duque in a seemingly calm but flirtatious manner, then gently licked the ice cream on her seductive red lips. She narrowed her eyes slightly and began to concentrate on melting the ice cream in her mouth bit by bit. Servanas was extremely conflicted. She looked at Duque, who was both her brother-in-law and her brother-in-law. He wasn't particularly good at fighting, but every time he did something earth-shattering. At the age of 17, he led the entire alliance and won one great battle after another. Not long after he killed Nesario, he came to borrow the Red Dragon Queen's hand to kill a greater demon. If she really wanted to choose a man who was not inferior to Duque, she really couldn't find one. However, as the most rebellious of the Windrunner's sisters, Servanas was disdainful of her third sister's private proposal to get close to Duque. Humph. I'd rather be single than make do. This ha something root ice cream is really delicious. On the other side, the queen had already turned her resentment into appetite. Or perhaps, her taste buds had already been destroyed by the terrible taste of raw meat and tasteless barbecue for 10,000 years. She was already overjoyed when she sneaked into Rotterdam last time. Now that she was eating this delicious food, she was so happy that she cried. Woo woo. It's so delicious. I've lived for more than 20,000 years, and this is the first time I've eaten something so delicious. Woo woo, the queen had actually learned the master-level ice cream eating godly skill. It wasn't just her exquisite ice cream eating skills, but also the intoxicated expression on her face as if she was about to orgasm. It gave Duque a strange sense of comfort. Perhaps every chef hoped that their customers could truly enjoy the fruits of their labor. This wasn't some kind of acting. Duque had once seen a set of Spirit of Drugs, oh, no, Spirit of Halberd Eating, manga. The women in it would feel numb all over when they ate something delicious. At that time, Duque thought it was exaggerated. He didn't think that he would actually see it in real life now. This wasn't acting. The intoxicated expression of the beauties in front of him was the truest reflection of their feelings. Suddenly, a system notification appeared. Congratulations, host. Your reputation in the Dragon Slumber Shrine is now, worship. Ha. Chapter 662. There was a question mark on Duque's head that no one else could see. Duque's face was full of confusion. In the game, players had to spend a lot of time to earn a reputation for any force. Regardless of whether it was convenient or not, at least a lot of time had to be invested. Comparisons were odious indeed. If his friends back on Earth knew that he had bribed Alexstrasza with a box of ice cream and a whole roast cow, who knew if they would curse at him, there was actually a premise for this, and that was that Duque had personally rescued Alexstrasza from Nasario's plot and assisted the 4 Dragon Kings in killing Nasario. This was the real unbreakable cornerstone of the relationship between the two sides. As for the ice cream, it was just a small prelude. The Dragon Sleeping Temple was the first extraordinary force that had a reputation of worship after Duque came to the world of Azeroth, and it had epic-making significance for Duque. Reputation in the game was more of a naked benefit, such as being able to exchange for better equipment. Reputation in the real world represented the degree of support the force had for Duque. Looking at the system prompt, his guardian authority had become, in the guardian battle, you can specify an unlimited number of ancient red dragons to fight together as needed. The blue dragons, green dragons, and bronze dragons will definitely respond to your reasonable call. Duque began to understand the significance of the reputation of worship. Reputation of worship meant that the force had already sacrificed themselves for him without any hesitation. Just like before, after the reputation of worship, in Stormwind City, Lang did not even mind Duque drawing out the territory of Stormwind to establish his own country. The soldiers and people were willing to share half with Duque. What's more, after Duque made it clear that he only wanted to be a Grand Duke and guard the borders of Stormwind and Azeroth, Lang was even more willing to contribute money and strength. If he could give a gold coin, he would never be short of anything. It was the same for the Dragon Sleeping Temple now. As long as the Dragon Sleeping Temple identified a force as the enemy of Azeroth, they would definitely be able to attract the Dragon Clan's reinforcements. Looking at the other forces, Duque suddenly felt that he was doing quite well in Azeroth. The ones that accumulated worship were Stormwind City, Iron Furnace Fort, Rapid Stream Fort, and Dragon Slumber Temple. Reverence, Kull, Tiras, Nomarigan, and Eagle Nest Mountain. The other kingdoms were basically respectful. Only Rotterdam and Kuel Salis were indifferent. Lordaeron was defeated because Duque had repeatedly slapped Tarinas in the face. As for Kuel Salis, Duque had poached his 3 strongest ranger generals. Kuel Salis was already giving Kuel Salis face by not falling out with Duque. Duque only had one question at the moment. Was the Calamity Troop an enemy in the eyes of the dragon tribe? When Duque asked about the queen tilted her head and reluctantly stopped talking. Well, there are rarely any foreign races or fallen humans with demonic powers. Actually, it depends on how dangerous the target is. In our definition, there are only two groups of absolute enemies, excluding the fallen Nesario. One is the demons of the Burning Legion, and the other is the most powerful subordinates of the ancient god of Azeroth. Oh. The rest will have to be determined by a meeting. You know, unless it is a very urgent situation, I have the right to order an emergency meeting. Otherwise, it will be very troublesome to wait for those guys who are often asleep or not doing proper work. Alexstrasza shrugged. The next second, she found that a small piece of ice cream had fallen. The queen stuck out her tongue in an attempt to save the ice cream, but accidentally let the ice cream fall into the dragon's valley in her breastplate. Without the restraint that a human lady should have, the queen actually pinched the ice cream out with 2 fingers and put it back into her mouth. Well, she even sucked on her fingers. Watching the half-melted ice cream drip down the dragon's peak into the deep valley, Duque hurriedly turned his head and silently chanted a spell in his heart. That thing is a dragon. That thing is a dragon. Eating ice cream with barbecued meat was just a small interlude. What made everyone the happiest was that they had foiled another conspiracy of the Burning Legion without any losses on their side. Duque had recovered the entire Karazhan Mage Tower, and the heroes had obtained a lot of epic equipment. For example, Edwin had obtained an epic one-handed sword, Grudge, and a pair of Lurker's leg guards. Benedict had obtained Penance's trousers. Muradin obtained a defense warrior, Amiramus shoulder pads. On average, everyone had obtained 2 pieces of epic equipment that surpassed this point in time. This was a real improvement for the heroes. Even though they had stepped into the realm of heroes, they could not fully unleash the mysterious power contained in these pieces of equipment. This did not hinder them from setting a direction and a benchmark for their efforts. The group returned to Lordaeron that night. When that big-mouth Muradin spread the news of what had happened in Karazhan, the entire city of Lordaeron seemed to have experienced another major earthquake. Everyone was in an uproar. The demons were here again? So soon. It wasn't that long ago that Sargeras had corrupted and controlled the previous guardian, Medivh. Suddenly, there was another conspiracy against Azeroth? Some of the Ostrich faction had wanted to deny that this was an invasion, thinking that it was a false conspiracy fabricated by Duque. Unfortunately, there were not many people who went to Karazhan this time, but the entire upper echelons of the Alliance were well represented. Apart from the people of Stormwind, there were also heroes from various fields. Magni naturally believed in his younger brother, Muradin. Benedict also represented the Church of Holy Light. Tyrion Fordring's character and his identity as one of the 5 Silver Saints were naturally recognized by the people of Lordaeron and the Paladins. For a moment, Duque was once again pushed to the top of the waves. Compared to the previous time when he had assisted the 4 dragon aspects in killing Nesario, killing the commander of the Burning Legion did not seem to stimulate the people's senses. Only the upper echelons of the Alliance knew the significance of Duque's actions. Just as King Lang was preparing to hold another celebratory dinner for Duque, a piece of news made the warm atmosphere in the entire city of Lordaeron disappear without a trace. Wuther came to the state guest house in Stormwind. After seeing Duque, Lang, and Anduin, he immediately said, "The Archbishop of the Holy Light, His Excellency Alonso's Fail, is critically ill. Before he dies, he wishes to see the 3 of you, especially His Excellency Marcus." Duque and Lang were stunned. They froze in their chairs. Anduin, who had the best relationship with Alonso's, stood up in an instant and clenched his fists. This man, who had experienced the pain of the subjugation of his country and the death of his comrades in battle, and who had been fighting on the front lines against the tribes from the beginning to the end, cried openly for the first time. Tears uncontrollably rolled down his determined and masculine face. When did this happen? Why didn't we receive any news at all? Chapter 663. Holy Light Cathedral of Lordaeron. When the orcs invaded the city, the cathedral was lucky enough to escape the flames of war. When the Deathwing almost destroyed the palace, the Holy Light still protected the cathedral. People often said that the glory of the Holy Light would allow the cathedral and the Church of Holy Light to avoid disaster. This time, it seemed that the Church of Holy Light had used up all of its resources. Outside the pure white cathedral, every member of the clergy was in a hurry, and their faces were filled with sorrow. Even the white outer tower of the cathedral seemed to be covered in a layer of shadow. After a few major incidents, almost all the other countries of the Alliance wanted to see the people of Lordaeron suffer. Alonso's fail was not one of them. He was different from Terina's, who looked righteous on the surface, but was actually a hypocrite who kept scheming for the benefit of his country. Alonso's was a true and selfless saint. A long time ago in the Dalajan, a Lordaeron missionary threw a copper coin into the fountain and made a wish. I hope that one day I can spread the way of the holy light to the people and teach them the meaning of the three great virtues. Before the orcs invaded, Alonso's had been doing this. He preached throughout the entire Eastern Kingdom, spreading the light of hope to the 7 human kingdoms. In every country, in every city, he built a church of holy light, spreading the virtues, calling on people to take care of orphans who had lost their parents, calling on every sinner, and trying to pull everyone onto the path of good. When the War of the Dark Portal started, he was the first to call on all the countries to accept the refugees from Stormwind. He was also the one who mobilized the entire Church of Holy Light to continue supporting the frontline during the fiercest times of the war. He was the one who comforted the people and gave them confidence and courage. And after the war, he was also the first to stand up and call on the wealthy families and nobles who had surplus funds to donate to the restoration of the Stormwind Kingdom and the Stormguard Kingdom that had been destroyed in the war. In order to fight against evil, he ran around and gave speeches. In order to promote justice, he created the great profession of paladin. In order to revive the human race, he worked hard for the revival of the other countries without rest. He was a truly noble person. If Terina's shamed the people of Lordaeron, then Alonso's was the key to making the people of Lordaeron great again. The kings of the Alliance could ignore Terina's, but Alonso's was a truly kind and noble old man, so the kings would always give him their utmost support. But now, without any warning, Alonso's had collapsed. At this time, almost all the kings who were still in Rotterdam gathered in the cathedral. The kings who had already left immediately returned. Even King Xian of Gilnis, who had withdrawn from the alliance, sent his ministers to express his condolences. Duke, Ryan, Andoin, and the rest felt heavy as they followed Uther, who had a solemn look on his face. At this point, the priest's cure illness was already very mature. Ordinary ailments and pains would not affect Bishop Alonso's body. Duque secretly asked Uther if the archbishop was cursed, but Uther shook his head. Outside the archbishop's bedroom, Duque saw King Salas, who was a little depressed. Salas's eyes were red, and it was very likely that he had cried a little. Not every fallen king had a spiritual leader like Andoin as a helper, and not every king had a decathlon like Duke who could support the whole country. In the days when Stormguard was destroyed, Archbishop Alonso's was the one who accompanied Salas the most. At the crucial time of the restoration of the country, the one who gave the people of Stormguard the most help other than Duque was Alonso's. Alonso's suddenly collapsed. Even a man like Salas, who had been through a lot, felt an important pillar of support in his heart collapse. Other than Bolvar Fordragon, who was still in charge of the country in Stormwind, and Reginald Windsor, who stayed in the Riedridge Mountains to command Duque's private army, all the paladins were already waiting outside the door. Seeing Duque and the others coming, Salas's mouth was full of bitterness. Lord Fail's time is limited. According to the archbishop's wishes, Uther will lead you in one by one. The first to enter was Lang. 5 minutes later, Lang came out with a heavy heart. To everyone's surprise, they thought that Anduin Lothar, who had the best relationship with Alonso's, would be the last to enter. Who knew that the archbishop would arrange for Lothar to be the second to last? As for the last person who was the most important, the archbishop's order was surprisingly given to Duke. 15 minutes later, Andoin came out with tears on his face. Uther lowered his head. Duque, master wants to see you alone. Everyone was extremely shocked. As the eldest disciple of Phael, Uther was the most outstanding and the archbishop was most proud of. His justice and bravery had long surpassed the boundaries of the country. Since the archbishop was critically ill, Uther had been by his side. Basically, every time Phael met with the politicians of the various countries, there would be at least one disciple accompanying him. Generally, it would be Uther, Theon, and Sidan. Now, it was a private meeting. What did Alonsos want to say to Duque? Even a righteous paladin like Uther could not attend? Everyone's curiosity was in their throats. Duque entered. It was a very bright and very simple room. There was no strong smell of medicine as expected, but the room was filled with natural and peaceful faint golden light. Alonso sat upright on the bed. He did not look like a dying person at all. Seeing Duque's shock, Alonso's laughed. I don't look like a dying person, do I? Duque nodded. A person like Alonso's did not need to lie, even if it was a white lie. I used to think that as long as one's heart was pure, the amount of holy light a human body could contain was unlimited. Unfortunately, compared to my soul, my mortal body was the first to succumb, Alonso said with a bitter smile. Let me put it this way. My body could not bear such a huge amount of holy light. My organs began to forget how they originally worked, and as a result, my body uncontrollably weakened. It's really sad, isn't it? An archbishop who was once determined to use holy light to save the world actually died under holy light. The bitter smile on his face became even more intense. Your Excellency, you're asking too much. Humans are not like the Naru, who are creatures made purely of holy light. Naru? A pure holy light creature? Alonso suddenly became curious. Duke suddenly realized that he had let the cat out of the bag. They could not even talk about counterattacking Draenor. The Alliance had not met the Draenei yet, so naturally, they would not know about the Naru. He could only say that he had seen descriptions of such a race in the books of Karazhan, but had not personally witnessed it. Alonso saw through Duque's disguise, but he did not blame Duque. Instead, he said, Duque, are you willing to inherit my will? Chapter 664. Duque was almost scared to death on the spot. Are you asking me to delete my character and start all over again? Huh? Duque pointed at his face in surprise. I'm a mage. Alonso's was taken aback, and immediately laughed. No, you misunderstood. Although I personally created the profession of paladin, it's also because priests and paladins have common characteristics. I don't have the wisdom to cross different power systems to turn a mage into a priest. The fact that Nesario transformed into the Lord of Pristo and almost became one of the kings of the Alliance deeply touched me. Although this is a part of human nature, it also made me alert. If the important members of the Alliance are corrupted by evil and fall spiritually, the consequences will be devastating. Duque thought to himself, are you a quack too? Did you also foresee the fall of Arthas and Kale? Who knew that Alonso's slap in the face, which was clearly unintentional, made Du's face swell. Archbishop Alonso said directly, actually, the person I'm most worried about is you, Duque. Me? Duque pointed at himself bitterly. Yes. In the entire Alliance, the one I admire the most, but also worry about the most, is you. Duque, is this a compliment or a criticism? Is this a form of flattery? You have the most outstanding military talent since Thoradin the Great. No king, marshal, or general can match your talent in commanding. You are also likely to become the greatest mage in human history. As long as you are given enough time, it is not surprising that you surpass the previous guardian, Medivh. But I found that you have a fatal weakness. Your will is too weak compared to your power. You can even find this? Actually, you're not the only one who has a weakness. Since ancient times, almost all heroes who became famous at a young age have similar weaknesses. They reach the peak of their achievements at a very young age, then lose themselves and their direction in the midst of flowers and applause. They had forgotten their original intentions, forgotten their own hearts. They pursue illusory fame too much, and in the end, they fall. In fact, there are many saints in the Cathedral of Light who have fallen to the devil's minions. No, 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 I know very well that the Burning Legion will come. I don't have the capital to fall. And the Burning Legion. I don't even love succubi. How can I fall in love with someone with a different style? Completely unaware of Duke's thoughts, Alonso's continued to sigh. I'm not denying your achievements and status. However, if something were to happen to you, the core power of the Alliance, it would be no less than Nisario's attack on the Long Sleep Temple back. For a moment, Duke felt as though 100,000 alpacas were galloping in his heart. Are you trying to say I might become the second Nisario? If it was anyone else who said this to Duke would definitely slap them without any explanation. But towards Alonso's, a true saint who had dedicated his life to the people, especially a saint who was about to die, Duke could not bring himself to be angry. Duke lowered his head slightly. Your Grace is right. My temperament does need to be tempered. All right, I'll accept it. Alonso's waved his hand. No. I'm the one who's being rude. Duque, you've proven yourself several times under the temptation and coercion of the devil, yet I still doubt you. It's my fault. Unfortunately, with Aegwin and Mediv as precedents, I still hope that you can accept the power of holy light that contains my will. I swear, this power of holy light will not destroy your body or soul. Its only function is to automatically fight back for you when your body and soul are invaded by the devil. I dare not say that I can resist the power of a greater demon, but high-level demons are not a problem. Phew. Duque heaved a sigh of relief. In that case, I have no objections. Actually, I also know that you mages don't like. Wait, you agree? As a preacher who taught people to be kind, Alonso's talent in verbal cannons was undoubtedly top-notch. He was already mentally prepared to guide Duque to be kind no matter what. Because if Duque fell, the Alliance would really be in trouble. Who would have thought that Duque had always been worried about not having enough humanity? Previously, Gul'dan had activated the curse that Sargeras had left on Duque, which had drained a lot of Duque's humanity. Duque had never been able to replenish it. At the end of the day, Duque was still someone who was afraid of death. Fearlessness and whatnot never happened to him. But under external pressure, he was always able to erupt with unprecedented courage at the critical moment. This time, Duque had chosen to accept it because he was also afraid of death. Duque had had enough of the greater demon's curse. That level of curse would not only consume one's life and soul, but even worse was the contamination of one's spirit and will. This was not something that could be withstood with just a firm will. Duque was not Bolvar. When he asked himself if his body was constantly being burned by flames, the first thing he would have to do was to surrender. Chief Shaman of the Burning Legion. Elder, please accept me as your disciple. I don't ask for anything. Just give me 2 coquettish sluts. Oh, no, 2 succubus secretaries. Cough cough. Duque discovered one thing. If Zul was chosen by Kil Jaden as the Lich King because of his talent in controlling a large number of undead subordinates, then Duque, who had the system elf, seemed to be more suitable to be the Lich King than Zul. After advancing to a Radiant Moon Archmage, Duque discovered that the upper limit of his control had greatly increased. Now, he could control up to 512 magic hands at the same time, and could launch 256 of the highest level of Flame Blast at the same time. Duque could not imagine what would happen if he, a transmigrator with super multicasting talent and super group mind control ability, degenerated into a Lich King. Wouldn't that mean that the world of Azeroth would definitely kneel? For the sake that the fierce girl beside him did not have to turn against him, for the sake that he did not have to open a harem as a dead person, for the sake of the few benefits of transmigrators, Duque was determined to fight against evil to the end. Looking at Duque's complicated eyes, Alonso's felt very strange. He had seen countless people in his life, noble, despicable, hypocritical, and despicable. He dared to say that he could see through a person's character at a glance. But the feeling that Duque gave him was always the most special one. Obviously, Duque looked like a little ruffian. He did not have a firm belief, did not have enough courage to do big things, and at most had a little cleverness. But every time at a critical moment, he would give people a contradictory feeling, and one could fully see the flash of humanity in him. Haha. Perhaps it was because of this contradiction that he was human. Alonso's fail extended his hand to Duque. Chapter 665. Looking at this kind and noble old man reaching out his skinny hand, Duque had mixed feelings. It wasn't that he didn't think of using the 7 eternal slots that Alexstrasza had transferred to him. The results of the system scan made him depressed. According to the scan, there is a 98.44% chance that the Archbishop had purged too much evil power, and the accumulated dark power had destroyed his body's acceptance of the power of the holy light. This caused the Archbishop to be unable to bear the excessive power of the holy light in his body, and he self-destructed. Duque sighed deeply, reached out his hand, and gently held Alonso's hand. The gentle holy light came, and it was like the comfort of the warm sun in winter. There was no surging sense of power, and there was no high and mighty majesty. There was only the benevolent faith of an old man who had given his whole life. In the golden holy light, Duque found himself in a trance. His vision became blurry, and the scene in front of him seemed to have traveled through more than 2,000 years, and arrived at the newly established Lordaeron. Countless new human settlements were scattered all over the lush Tirisful glade. After defeating the evil trolls, humans were taking root in this forest step by step. With the hope of civilization, they absorbed nutrients from this land, and multiplied. Back then, King Menethil loved his people dearly because he believed that with his hard work, he would one day make his people strong enough to support the entire human race. They faced countless beasts, and the remnants of the trolls who were unwilling to be destroyed, and fought with all their might. More than 2,000 years later, there was another green tide that swept the whole continent, but the enemies changed from trolls to orcs. Humans, dwarves, high elves, and even dragons won with everyone's hard work. However, the land was destroyed for the first time in 2,800 years. Alonso's was very sad, because in the darkest era since the pioneering era, when the people needed hope the most, he could not hold on. Even with the will that came from the holy light, Duque could feel Alonso's sorrow. The land was devastated, and the people were homeless. A woman who had lost her husband carried a crying baby on her back, endured the pain brought about by the war, and did a man's job with tears in her eyes. She climbed up the roof to help the neighbor's auntie fix the hole in the roof, braved the cold wind to go up the mountain to chop firewood, picked up a sickle like a man, and charged at the starving orcs who rushed into the village. Everything that Alonso's had seen with his own eyes had been transmitted over to Duke, and it was presented so vividly in front of his eyes. For the king, the war was over. For the people, the war was not over. The old peace was short-lived. A new war would come. At this moment, Duque truly felt that he and the Azeroth people were breathing the same air of the future and shouldering the same huge sense of mission. As a transmigrator, he had the gaze of a prophet that could make everyone in the world tremble. But Duque had not done enough. You can do better. Protecting Azeroth, the last human habitat, was not an easy task. Duque could not go back. If that was the case, then he had to be prepared to work hard for decades, or even centuries, until the Titan of creation came again and destroyed the Burning Legion to achieve the ultimate peace. He shouldered the future of Azeroth, the inheritance of civilization, and the continuation of order. His efforts to change World War II was only a small step in changing the future of Azeroth. This was far from enough. The war between the Alliance and the Horde in the Eastern Kingdom, which only took up 1/5 of Azeroth's land area, and even the war that would spread to the entire world in the future, was nothing more than a joke in front of the burning Legion's spaceships. There are still many things I can do. More black technology, more progress, more magical skills. Only then can humans, no, the entire alliance stand at the edge of this mysterious universe. Alonso's fail did not have the ability to read minds. He did not know what Duke had seen, discovered, or comprehended after the holy light that had passed on his will was transmitted over. But seeing the expression on the face of the most talented young man in the history of the Alliance, Alonso's knew that as the guide, he had opened the door to a vast world for Duque. He no longer had the chance to see the magnificent scenery at the door, but he knew that the will of the holy light would be passed on, and the hope of humans would be reignited. Alonso smiled and patted Duque's shoulder, doing something that surprised Duque. He, who was supposed to be extremely weak, suddenly got up from the bed. He did not look like a dying man at all. Only Duque was sad. He knew that Alonso's, a respectable senior, had released the last shackle, allowing the power of the holy light to impact every cell, every inch of muscle, and every organ in his body. That was his last glory, and also the last will that the Archbishop of the Holy Light wanted to pass on to the world. The entire Cathedral of Holy Light abruptly responded to Alonso's will. No, it was not just this cathedral. From the terraceful woodland, from the silver pine forest, from the white domes of every cathedral on the continent, golden rays of light shot out. Countless rays of golden light crossed the void and gathered there, forming a huge pillar of light that was more than 100 meters in diameter. It rose into the sky from the center of Rotterdam city. Every room and prayer hall in the cathedral that Alonso's was in echoed with the prayers of the priests in unison. However, the bishops of various sizes who were dressed in gorgeous robes opened their eyes in shock, because for the first time, there was a response from the holy light in the spiritual world that was originally empty and silent. The big bell in the holy palace suddenly rang when it sensed the intense holy light that was echoing in the air. The priests rushed out of the prayer hall one after another. They saw the door of Archbishop Fail's ward open. No one opened the door. Alonso's hovered in midair under the support of the power of the holy light, and floated out slowly. Duque followed behind him and arrived at the center of the main hall. Alonso stood in the void like a god who had descended to the world. Every priest prostrated on the ground consciously. Every holy knight knelt on one knee and placed his right hand on the breastplate on the left side of his chest. Even the king of a country had to bow deeply to show his humility towards the power of the holy light. Alonso smiled and said, "Someone once asked me why I did not appoint the next Archbishop of the Holy Light. At this last moment, I will answer this question." Several bishops who had once tried to fight for power immediately shivered, and subconsciously pressed their foreheads closer to the cold ground. Chapter 666. I once said, I hope that one day, I can spread the path of the holy light to the commoners and teach them the meaning of the three great virtues. I have spent my entire life working hard for this and have never once deviated from the will of the holy light. So, I am the archbishop that all of you acknowledge. From the very beginning, I've always believed that worldly authority shouldn't be the ruler of the holy light. If I were to personally appoint a successor, then the Church of Holy Light would one day be filled with benefits, and it would gradually decay and be destroyed. Since I am destined to return to the embrace of the holy light, then let the holy light choose a true emissary of light. Alonso slowly extended his right index finger and pointed in the air. The ethereal and holy voice sounded again. Who among you is willing to dedicate every moment of your life to the holy light? Swear on your soul before the holy light that you will help the weak, save the sick, punish the cruel, uphold justice, and spread the three great virtues for the rest of your life? After a pause, Alonso's continued, those who are willing, please step forward. As soon as he finished speaking, the holy light on his body doubled in strength. To the naked eye, this was already a radiance that was more dazzling than the sun. However, none of the people present felt that the holy light was dazzling. Even though it was dazzling, everyone could clearly see every detail on Alonso's body. A regional bishop of the Church of Holy Light who had been fighting for the position of archbishop wanted to stand up and step forward. However, he was horrified to feel the resistance from the holy light. It was a type of disgust and resistance towards impure things. It was like an evil creature that wanted to call itself a brother of a holy creature but was coldly and mercilessly rejected. It was not that he did not try to sneak in, but he was immediately met with an even greater retaliation from the holy light. Suddenly, a golden holy light rose from his body. The holy light was like a flame that surrounded his body. If he made the slightest movement, he would immediately feel a heart-wrenching pain. He was drenched in sweat and crawled on the ground in fear, not daring to move anymore. Alonso's looked at the regional bishop from Derbyshire with a pitiful gaze before retracting his gaze. The will of the Holy Light was clear. Those who attempted to ascend to the position of Archbishop of Holy Light with selfish desires would be punished severely. Alonso shook his head slightly and said slowly, "The position of an archbishop does not represent authority, nor does it represent glory. On the contrary, it was a sacred duty. This means that the person who ascends to this position will have to shoulder the heavy responsibility of saving the miserable and suffering people from despair. An archbishop is not a savior. He could not save every good soul that was exposed to the butcher knife of the cruel enemy. But the archbishop represents the ultimate beauty and goodness of the world, and represents the last hope of everyone in despair. What right does an ordinary mortal have to recite the archbishop's name in despair? Because of your selfless sacrifice and dedication. Because of all the hard work you've done for the people of the world. You used your own life and soul to set a benchmark for the goodness of the world. To bring hope to billions of lives." At this point, Alonso's voice slowed down. "The holy light rejects all impurities. Those with selfish desires, please leave. I will ask you one last time, who wishes to inherit the will of the holy light and make your name truly sacred, please step forward." A bishop retreated. He was ashamed. He crawled on the ground, moved his legs, and slowly exited the hall. 2 bishops retreated. 5 bishops retreated. Of the bishops of the 7 kingdoms, apart from Fao, who was also the bishop of Lordaeron, 5 had retreated. Only Benedictus, the bishop of Stormwind, was left. Benedictus neither advanced nor retreated. He calmly knelt on the ground, letting his face be bathed in the waves of holy light that undulated in the main hall. He was quietly waiting for the new archbishop to be born. Alonso's demands were too high. All humans have selfish desires. Humans had birth, old age, sickness, and death. As long as one was human, there would always be things one wanted to do. Was there really such a perfect, selfless saint? Speaking of which, if he was this pious, was he still human? At this moment, a person moved. He was Alonso's most beloved and valued disciple, Wuxia the Lightbringer. Wuxia's calm voice rang out. "I believe I can do all of the above. If everyone does not mind that I am a holy knight, I am willing to accept the inheritance of the will of the holy light." There was a low commotion around, but it quickly subsided. Alonso spoke. "The path of the holy light does not discriminate by nationality or race. The holy light is the ultimate wish of all things in the world. If you, Wuxia, are willing to offer your life and soul to the holy light for all people in the world, then please stand in front of me." Wuxia did not hesitate. He walked up to Alonso's, who was suspended in the air, and knelt on one knee. He lowered his head, which he did not even lower for the king. "I, Wuxia the Lightbringer, swear before the holy light that I am willing to abide by the 3 great virtues. I will use my life to spread the holy light, spread hope, punish evil, and promote justice." The clear and sonorous voice echoed throughout the entire Holy Light Cathedral. Although it was a little strange for a holy knight to be the next archbishop of the Holy Light, the priests quickly accepted it. Yes. Only a truly selfless person had the right to set foot on that holy position, and only had the right to be holy in the hearts of the people. Alonso smiled as he lowered his body and patted the shoulder of his most devout disciple. Tears of gratification flowed from the corner of his eyes. He looked up to the sky and shouted, "Praise the holy light." Suddenly, an illusory ball of golden holy light descended on Wuxia's head, forming a golden crown that looked like a garland. This was the holy light's recognition of Wuxia. For a moment, everyone was stunned. After being stunned for a full 3 seconds, countless priests knelt on the ground, straightened their backs, and raised their hands to the sky. Praise the holy light, praise holy Wuxia. The next moment, everyone's voice stopped. That's right. The moment the inheritance was completed, Alonso Fail's name became history. Wuxia the Lightbringer's name became the new holy. Wuxia the Lightbringer's tears flowed down his face as he hugged his teacher's limp body. On this day, with Lordaeron as the starting point, the bells of every church of light in every city and every small town in every village rang. Countless believers knelt on the ground and cried in sorrow. Everyone used this method to commemorate the passing of a true saint. Standing on the balcony of the state guesthouse, Duque looked at the Holy Light Cathedral from afar and suddenly said softly, "Let's go. It's time to leave." You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.